welcome to the Hawks Nest stream show. My name is Brendan Kane, and I do appreciate you for tuning on here on a unusually timed Tuesday afternoon, as we normally do this on Wednesday, but with the last week, short week and whatnot, so I decided to spin this one up a little bit faster than we normally have these shows where we take a look at the past week of the Seahawks action, both the game and maybe some news that's come down the line, just in case some things get slipping between the cracks here. So let's dive right on into it today. We've got a good amount to cover here. It's not been an action-packed day, nor action-packed really a couple days. We have one significant move to really talk about here. But we do have some trades in the NFL, as you've got Amari Cooper going to the Buffalo Bills, a future Seahawk opponent that they're going to be facing. And then you have Devontae Adams going to the Jets, another future opponent that the Seahawks are facing. So a not horrendous schedule going into the future here, but certainly a little bit of a toughening maybe schedule here as we look going down the line, certainly especially with Minnesota looking better and better as well. That's not going to be anything easy to overtake. But Seahawks have been quiet, absent, of course, one move that they made yesterday, making the second move in about a month span, attacking or going to look to address down on that defensive line. They, of course, went out and got Travis Gibson with the Darrell Taylor pick that they had gotten back from the Chicago Bears right before the start of the season there at training camp. And then they went out yesterday and got Roy Robertson Harris. Now, some things I want to cover in this deal, and it's not really one that's going to make my needle get overblown here. It's a critique, but it's not one that I'm emotionally attached to in this. But it is something that I think and believe in this situation, which is that these last two moves being made to me feel very reactionary in the Travis Gibson move and this move. And I understand some of it was injury before. This is less to do with injury and maybe to do with underperformance from guys like Mike Morris or Miles Adams or maybe even a Draymond Jones, if he's going to fill in and try to be some of the power edge stuff off of that side that they don't think that Draymond can do as well. We'll see what the plan is going to be in place for him. But you're just sort of spinning through a little bit to me on the side of this. You're throwing picks away for more of a here in the now kind of moment move. And what I mean by that is that that's certainly what was going on with Gibson. I think that's partially what's going on with this guy. He does have 2 years of club control after this season, but this was to me more of something to shore up the here and now. And when I look at this year, and I'm not trying to be completely out on this year, just trying to be realistic in the outlook of it, it could turn around. We can start to re-click back in things here and it can start to roll and look great. But in playing more of the odds from my perspective of it and just what you would typically do as a first-year coach coming in is it's more of a read and assess, not read, assess, and make a whole bunch of almost, I'm not calling them desperate moves, but urgent moves. And people are saying to me on this, on or on Twitter, well, it's just a 6th round pick. Who cares? Who cares? Just throw that pick away. You know who we picked with a 6th round pick this year was DJ James. So what are you even mad about? What you worried about losing to DJ James? I think that this is a bit of a defeatist attitude in the outlook of moving picks, because you also got a Sa'atoa Laumea in the 6th round. He may eventually down the line end up turning into a quality offensive lineman for us. Do 6th round picks then not matter then? Or do we just cherry pick the one that didn't work out well? I don't like this mentality I see at times in looking at these picks in that way, especially when the team is for the second straight month throwing one of these picks to kind of the wind. I think this is a little bit of an extension from what I saw a couple of years ago, where you remember the Seahawks had a really hard time picking in the late 1st round. They were lamenting, man, the blue chip players are gone, just having a hard time picking the right guys in this 1st round. And then it ended up pushing them to make a trade for Jamal Adams and just throwing 2 1st round picks away. Because what did it matter anyway? They were late 1st round picks, and we don't pick their very good anyway. It's probably not the right mentality to try to apply in that situation, right? Pick better, select better, fix that part of it. Don't just suddenly go, we don't do this good, so just toss all that stuff away out the door. And there's a little bit of that to me when I hear that 6th round picks just don't matter. Whatever, There's a lot of teams, even within our own division, including the Rams and the Niners, that have used picks in that depths of the draft to help build quality on their team. And so I'm not a fan on that front of it. And then you have the extra part of this, which is, yes, there is cost associated with this deal in addition to it. He's not just a freebie. I think people are getting caught up on the fact that the bonus money bleeds out immediately in the trade. And then you have the basically veteran minimum that you have him on the salary for this year of $1.7 million. You have the remaining portion of that. But next year, the base salary's increased. Next year, there's even some option bonuses that work into this. It's $6 million next year and $6 million the year after that for the cost of this guy. So it's not just pennies to get this guy. And maybe the pick is something that doesn't matter to you, but the money should. The Seattle Seahawks, prior to this deal, had $6 million in 2025 cap space. Let me say that again. They had $5 million remaining in cap space for the 2025 as yet unplayed season. You want to know how much they have right now after this deal's done? Zero. I hope this player turns out to be a very good one. I hope that this is a guy that can help start to turn some things around, I suppose, on this defensive line. I don't think he's going to bring a lot in the run defense, but maybe, like I said, maybe he'll take over Draymond Jones's position out there as that power edge on the early downs, and he'll work to stop it to that front of things. Maybe. But I don't think it looks like a no-brainer intelligent move on the surface. And it is a little bit of a track, as I say, of not just a move that exists in this vacuum, but a little bit of a trend I see from this team at times where they're scrambling in season to try to fix things that probably should have been dealt with in the offseason and dealt with more thoroughly. But hopefully he turns into a pretty good player. That's just some of my trepidations when it comes to this particular move. All right, let's keep it rolling along here, and I want to just dive right on into some of our segments today. Let's take a look at the first one right off the rip, which is, of course, our PFF Grades of the Week. And these are not going to be the funnest of grades to watch today, but we're going to go through them nonetheless here. And we'll start off with the offensive side of this, where Charles Cross, while you have an offensive line that is in much of disrepair across the board for the most part, Connor Williams is slowly starting to kind of get a little bit better. The left side, the left tackle position, the blind side protector has been on point throughout the season as far as Cross is concerned. I believe he's a top 3, top 4 rated left tackle by PFF. Comes out of this game, again, very well graded from what he brought to the table on that. Noah Fant had a really good game, perhaps his best graded game of the year. DK Metcalf, often aligned by some in the fan base, still was well graded in this game. Laken Tomlinson, I believe, had his best graded game of the season at 67.6 as well. So good grades from them. Bobo Lockett did well. Geno Smith, kind of about a middle of the road day. I would have almost expected maybe Geno might have been a little bit worse on the grade from what I saw from it. As I said, Connor's kind of coming up. Connor started sort of in a low 50s stage of things here when you look at the beginning of the year where there's grades and where they're at. And it's bit by bit by bit over the course of the weeks as he's gotten probably healthier and more comfortable on this offensive line. His grade has kind of increased with that, and performance has increased with that. On the bottom side of it, we have Christian Haynes. And when people were kind of really making a very strong case a couple of weeks ago to me about Haynes needs to be the guy instead of Bradford, then Haynes is the guy to go with, that this is the one. Let's roll with him. He can't be any worse than Bradford. And I said, tap your brakes. Tap your brakes. Because he very well might be, and that's probably a lot of why the coaching staff doesn't actually have him on the field playing as much as Bradford, is that he hasn't fit up to what Bradford's fit up as far as performance even in practice. And the scores from this bear this out. I've also told you that if you bring him in, he's really only a pass protecting guy back there, which isn't, hey, maybe that works. Maybe that can be in their favor, especially as much as they're throwing the damn ball. But he's going to be a bit of a problem when it comes to run blocking, that will be a real big thing. And so the grade again shows just what I sort of prognosticated about this if you have Haynes out there. So if you're willing to do the price of business, that you can get the good pass protection, and again, maybe so, because you go, hey, we're throwing the ball 45, 50 times a game. We're only going to be running the ball about 25. So lean to what we're doing more of and have him out there for that. But I think you are going to get some of that down with that good you get, and maybe cumulatively still a little bit below even where Bradford is. And I'm not saying Bradford's good. He had another poor game himself. So I'm not looking to say, hey, he's the answer either. He certainly has not stepped forward in his development. In many ways, almost he looks like he's regressing in certain respects right now to start this year off. Jackson Smith-Njigba was not well graded from the receiver position, 54.6. Still kind of waiting to feel, his impact as a former first-round guy. Stone Forsythe, miserable. 53.5. You, I think, could make a strong argument that he has been and pretty much be hard to debate it, the worst right tackle in all of football this year. He is a left tackle. He's playing out of position. He is a backup. He shouldn't be starting this many games. He will be exposed if you have him do that. But it's part of why this has been so kind of horrific, I guess. Flipping over to the defense, Kobe Bryant only had 8 snaps in this game, but he made the most with those snaps with an 82.9 grade. Good day for him. Devon Witherspoon, we're going to get back to him here in just a second. My underrated hero of the week for this team, 75.7 grade. And I do know, and we talked a bit about this, and I think it's fair to say we'd like to see a little more impact from the number 5 overall pick from a couple of years ago, but he has not been bad. He is a top 20 graded PFF player right now. He only gave up 3 yards in this game. He is my underrated hero of the week, and we'll get to in a second here, but he played a really good game. And maybe he's not getting as much splash and dash here as to what's going on, but some of that has to do with offenses and the opposition attacking other places on the football field away from him that are more vulnerable, more suspect. Mike Morris had a good game on 9 snaps. Didn't give him a lot of snaps. Again, makes me a little bit weird about this move they're making right now. If this is to replace a guy like Morris, who, okay, well, it wasn't bad on what he gave you on that side of it. Jaron Reed continues to have a really solid, quiet year. He's not necessarily lighting the world on fire, but 53 snaps he played in this game. He's played too many snaps, in my opinion, over the past couple of years with his age. He should be much more in a rotational point at this point, but he has to be tried out there by necessity. He played well. Leonard played another really good game. He's been awesome this year when he's been out there, aside from the previous week where I think he was still really fighting through that injury. Baker, Artie Burns, Dodson, pretty overall solid games as they're rated. It seems like PFF likes Dodson and Baker's play this year a little bit more than the general fans do on what they've seen from him. Hall had kind of a quiet day, dealing with a sore foot coming into this one. Julian Love had an oddly bad game, I think. He's just as good as he started out this year. It's kind of backtracked for him a little bit, running a little bit hot and cold. Mafe coming back from the injury as well. You wonder with both him and Hall if they're 100% as they're both having kind of their worst graded games of the season. Cameron Young getting just 2 snaps there back in his first action. Jonathan Hankins with 41 snaps having a tough day. I think John's probably wearing down at this point. You weren't counting on having to start him game after game after game after game and play this many snaps in that nose tackle position. You want to give him around 20 snaps a game, I think was more of the ideal when it came to Hankins. At the bottom of the list, Nehemiah Pritchett filling in for Tariq Woolen. He got picked on and he did not do well with it. Not well graded in any part of his game coming out of this. Rayshawn Jenkins has been a disappointment from the safety position. The guy they added this offseason is not bringing it like Pritchett. He's giving you a lot of nothing across the board here. You're not getting anything in coverage. You're not getting anything as a run defender. Just nothing. And Draymond Jones is quickly ascending. Here's the 3rd worst graded player of this game to becoming the worst free agent signing in John Schneider's history here with the Seahawks. It's getting hard not to say that. I wondered this offseason how this was going to work with him being put to the edge. You signed him out of Denver for what he did on the inside, not what he did off the edge. Yes, he played some snaps with Denver off the edge, but it was the damage he did on the inside in that defense why you signed him. And then you've moved him out of position and people say, well, he's not a fit for Mike McDonald's defense. Well, then I would have said, well, then what you do is you get off of him. You don't hold him in house and try to salvage it if there's no place for him in the defense as far as his position goes. Instead, they tried to move him to the edge because they didn't go get a power edge this offseason for what they needed for the defense. Come back again and again to having to scramble to do things that you could have done by looking out far in advance and dealing with it upstream. But Draymond's not doing too good on the outside. Maybe there's going to be some more snaps for him on the inside on this. Maybe they just don't feel like he's playing particularly well. But it is what it is with him on that one. And those are your individual scores with that. The special teams one is always a little bit tough to reconnoiter on this one because of the fact that you get the snaps so few. I don't know how D. Williams gets a 90.8 grade. Some of these special teams grades in general, I don't give a lot of bearing to because there's few snaps. But you just also sit there and go, I guess you're not counting the fumble on that one. I don't know where they're coming from with the special teams grades, but make of these what you will on that. Jake Bobo up there, Mike Morris up there, Brady Russell, guys you'd hope. Kobe Bryant's been always up there every week as a highest graded player for you from a special teams side of it. All right, moving along here on to the next segment, and this is a lighthearted one. We need some lightheartedness right now with the way the team's playing here over the past 3 games. And this one's a little lighthearted, but it's a little bit also of I got a bone to pick on this particular play to a degree. But this is one that I've taken from, of course, the ESPN segment of Come On, Man. And let's look at this individual play. We've got the final drive of the game for the Niners. The Seattle Seahawks cannot allow one first down. It's 1st down and 10. The Seattle Seahawks know they're going to run it. The Niners know the Seahawks know they're going to run it. Everyone in the stadium knows they're going to run it. And in this moment where everybody understands that, you end up with a play where the running back runs untouched until Devon Witherspoon can finally tackle him at the 2-yard line. Let me say it again. Untouched. You're in 3-4 defense here. You've clogged things up here where this shouldn't be the way this goes. All those bodies down the line of scrimmage. All those bodies down around that line of scrimmage. You got big bodies in there. You got Jaron Reed operating like a defensive end on this play. Hankins right there is a 0 tech. All these guys know that this is going to be a run, and still they're able to run it right down your throat on this play. Hard on this one not to look at it and feel like there's a little bit of a lack of, you go heart and will on this play almost. I know it's about the gap integrity and somebody doesn't get to their gap right, but Rayshawn Jenkins' angle downwind is just horrible. And Witherspoon being the only guy who decides to go down there and still be given an effort. Witherspoon, who throughout this game was doing everything he could to help the team on a defense that is really failing from an intensity standpoint and making you feel like you're getting just a rugged crew out there. He's the one guy that stands out in that way. And I'm not surprised he's the guy that ends up getting down there. Keeping in mind, he's not messing up on his block on this play. Witherspoon, he doesn't get off the Deebo Samuel block too late. He's outside leverage on this play, is Devon Witherspoon. So his job here is to force the play back inside, which is exactly what happens. Which is why it's down more to Rayshawn Jenkins not filling the hole, late to fill the hole, late to recognize that it's not a pass. And why is he so late? Why is Rayshawn Jenkins on his pre-snap keys here thinking that this is going to be, look, he's dropping back. Why? Why in the world would you be dropping back into a cover 3 state of things? Just, my goodness. Doesn't make any sense. Super frustrating. Look at it. Dropping back your safety on this play. This is 1st and 10. Everybody knows this is a run all the way. He takes himself out of position with that stupid ass drop. I don't understand it. I don't get it. Frustrating as hell. All I got to say, man, come on, man. Keep it on moving. Keep it on moving. All right. So let's move on next seg here. And this is the segment that I do like to call that play call that hit just a little bit different.
This one hit different.
I always like to go and look at things that are those little calls in the game that just sort of stand out and jump out to you as being ones that you really, really appreciate and enjoy from your play caller when they come into play. And today we're going to be looking at the offensive side because Lord knows we're not going to find much on that defensive side as far as play calls from that game. And this is a tip of the cap to Grubb. I do like what Grubb has brought to the table here for your Seahawks as an offensive coordinator. He is still learning his way. It's not been perfect. There are things that are a bit frustrating, I guess, about what he does. But there's also some things that I really do like. And the hook and ladder play last week where he's not a guy that gets stuck into a corner and goes, I got nowhere to go. He will think outside the box to find ways to push it forward, to get things kind of jump started out on a drive standpoint of things. And when you're having a hard time as he was in this game, and as he has coming into this game with running the ball in the early portions of the game, the Niners were on it. They seemed to know when we were going to run it. Their corners were crashing down to A-gap runs. It was kind of crazy, to be quite honest with it on that side. So he knows they can't run, but he wants to get these guys touches. He wants to get the ball into his hands of his running backs by some way. And the other way a lot of times people will do this is, of course, screen and throws out to the flat or just chunks down underneath, on little 3-yard routes that don't get you anything. What I liked from what we saw from Grubb in this game is more of the use of the tunnel screen. And he's using this tunnel screen off of the running back being in the backfield. So it's not your typical wide receiver tunnel screen coming from the line of scrimmage. The running backs starting in the backfield and then wrapping around, and then the linemen come out front. This is a 2nd and 16 call here. And when you look at this pre-snap, he's anticipating his grub. I'm probably going to get off coverage. I'm probably going to get a cover 2 look. So now I know I've only really got my 7 guys underneath I need to worry about as far as the 49ers are concerned at that point. You get your blockers out in front. You get the throw underneath here to Charbonnet. I just really, really do like this kind of play as a way to manufacture those touches, and it works. If you have those teams that you know and you can predict in those situations dropping back in that depth of coverage, you know you're going to have a light amount of bodies underneath. You're not going to have extra guys rallying up, and that it should be a really good gain. This gave him an opportunity on a 3rd down to come back after 2nd and 16 to get themselves in that position. Love the call. They also went to it earlier in this game to Kenneth Walker on another 3rd down, and the play should have been a big one. It should have been a 30, 35, 40-yard gain. Just a brilliant, amazing play by Fred Warner to come up and shoot the block on that play and get around, I think it's Charles Cross, because Cross has got him completely kind of ready to go, ready to be blocked up, and Walker's shooting across the field, doing his thing. You couldn't get much of a play on it, but I still think from Grubb's standpoint, the intelligence there is in what he's doing and going to these kind of plays like this, and manufacture more stuff where you have to if it's not working offensively. We'd love the running game to be more consistent, and then them to also be able to stay with it a little bit more, consistently throughout the early portion of the game. But it is hard to do it when you end out through that first half and you're something like 12 carries for 29 yards. It's tough to stay with the run on that type of stuff. So find ways that you can kind of manufacture things for your players at times. And Grubb has done that here and there. He's done it even with a guy like DK Metcalf at times. I think they got overly targeted on DK in this game and overly caught up on trying to get him at the forefront here. But cat's having a hairball over there. Woo! Still, I like the purpose of his approach. I like that he's not just kind of putting it always on the players and just get it done. That he'll come up with some creative concepts to help them out in addition to that. All right, here we go. Keep this on going, and let's look and see what Pumpkin's got going on this week. Of course, we do the segment here with my cat. She always does the pumpkin picks here. Let me get her into the frame. Why are you being so shy today? Pumpkin, of course, does our weekly picks here. We weren't able to quite get it in last week, though she did end up going with the Niners on that one. So that one was unfortunate, but didn't quite get the chance to get it all filmed in because we had the short week. But we do have the long week this week, so let's see what Pumpkin's got as far as her picks for this upcoming Atlanta Falcon Seattle Seahawks matchup in Pumpkin Predicts. All right, let's see where she goes. She's let us down a little bit here recently. We got 2 straight where she's predicted us on the loss. I don't know. Here we go. Come on, Pumpkin. What do you got? Had a hard time wrangling her on this one, so she came around the corner on her own way there. Thinks about it, and boom! There we go. So Pumpkin predicts your Seattle Seahawks are going to come back and get the victory. For the first time in 3 weeks, Pumpkin is predicting a Seahawks victory, so hopefully she is right on that. Look at her. She feels comfortable. She's at ease in her selection. She's got no wonder about it one way or the other. So Seahawks win from Pumpkin's perspective this week. I don't know if I'm going to feel the exact same way as her. Confidence is a little bit low right now, but I hope so. Next point we're going here. Let's get on to the biggest hit of the week.
The biggest hit of the week.
And this is going to be one of those untraditional type of big hits of the week. And just one I always love to watch nasty from offensive linemen. Willingness to get in there, get mean with it, get just, to the echo of the whistle, as they say, right? Physical all throughout the day, play after play. If you've got an opportunity to put a shot in there, you put that shot in. And this one comes courtesy of Laken Tomlinson, who had himself a well-graded game here for your Seahawks. And a play that, look, Bosa has really caused us some problems here through the years, has he not? He's been a problem. So I want your eyes to go over to the right side of the screen. Don't be looking at Geno Smith on this one. I'm going to have you look to the right side of the screen here. Charles Cross with Bosa. And Laken just comes over and cleans his clock. It's a legal play. It's a beautiful play. Punish Bosa every chance you get. If I could do this to him throughout a whole course of a game, I would. And I love the willingness from Lakin here to just take it to him on this play and really wrap him. Just a beautiful play there from Blake and Tomlinson, neutralizing Bosa 100% here. And more of that, please. If we play Bosa in the future, get yourself a defensive end like that. More of that. Please, please, please. But Lakin Tomlinson maybe had his best game of the year so far. And your biggest hit here of the week. Nice job there by Lakin. That feels good. After that loss, that one feels, I'm not going to lie, that one feels pretty good. We lost the 49ers again. Okay. I'm over it. All right, let's keep it moving here to our underrated hero of the week. And this is going to be Mr. Witherspoon. He is a top 20 PFF rated corner in this sport this year. I know he doesn't have an interception, but he's not a guy that's necessarily being targeted a lot. The ball's going other places away from him. He's doing his job in coverage. He's still fighting like mad in the run game and getting off blocks and doing everything like he's always done here since he walked on the field last year. And there's not a lot of highlight plays to show of you from this game necessarily. I do want to go back to that play we just saw a second ago on the broken play and the come on man moment where you've got Witherspoon running 70 yards down the field. The one player showing the effort on that play to go track down the ball carrier and tackle him. The one player in that play kind of not giving up, including Rayshawn Jenkins, who was just sort of like, oh, I just can't get him, I guess. But he was one of the guys tracking it in there. And he didn't fill up the line statistically as far as it goes with that. He helped out on a couple plays with tackles after the catch, given up on yards by other players on this team. You see him here doing what I talk about, which is willing to be ferocious and rally up. Witherspoon's going to be at the bottom of your screen, so he's the bottom end corner here. Watch just the willingness of him to drive up on this ball. He's not waiting for the block. Kyle Juszczyk, 44, is trying to get down to him on this play for a block. But Witherspoon shoots up so fast and so quickly that Juszczyk doesn't have a chance to get to the block in time. And people will look at things like last year and speak to Woolen, for instance, only being 1.2% worse missed tackle rate than Devon Witherspoon. And that's where you can't get so simplified in the statistics, because in stopping the run and being a good run defender and being a good tackler, your willingness to stick your nose in there more than a guy who might be making business decisions means you're going to have more tackle attempts than that guy too. But it doesn't speak to also the nature of ferocity, the level of commitment and intensity that guy's bringing when he's trying to play this portion of his game from the cornerback position, understanding so often that position is one that these guys don't give you everything they've got. And I think that that's just something that stands out with him here, time and time again. I'm sorry, 1 second here. Sorry about that, folks. Thought I had someone there at the door. I think I want to show here with Witherspoon is just want to get you, again, just kind of show you a little bit of what he's done this year so far in addition to this, where what I'm showing you right now is the target, receptions, and yards given up this year for Witherspoon. So 19 receptions given up on only 26 targets here through 6 games, which is good in itself. But also very minimal amount of yardage, only 147 total yards given up. So when he is giving up a catch, the guy's getting tackled quickly. You don't have 40 is the longest reception given up on him here so far this year. And you've got multiple games as you look at it here, week 2, and then this past week where he gave up less than 5 yards receiving throughout the whole total portion of the game. So Witherspoon, while he may not be giving exactly the same kind of splashy effect that people would want from the number 5 overall pick per se, he is certainly coming along. It's not a sophomore slump. He's not playing badly on that side of it. It's just we're waiting for more of the splash. And I think once the team can get back a little bit more to maybe taking it to offenses rather than offenses constantly taking it to them, you'll probably see some more of those kind of splash plays come back to the surface there with Witherspoon. More of the potential to get those interceptions like he did last year against the Giants in a game where you had Daniel Jones under an onslaught of pressure. Just consistently. Okay, keep on moving. Let's move on to the next segment here, which is going to be actually a short one this week, as the Rams were on a bye. and the Cardinals were playing, but we played with the Niners, so you guys know what happened with them. But let's take a look at the rest of what's going on, tracking the NFC West. Well, came into this week as first place team, and we leave tied, sort of tied. We lose the tiebreaker this week. So while we are 3-3 and we are in the hunt of this, it certainly still does pay to pay attention to what's going on with the opponents, where they're at, how they're operating. And this week, we're going to just be looking at one game, really, because as I said, the Rams are on a bye. They're trying to get healthier. They are thinking that they're going to be getting Cooper Kupp back soon and Puka back soon. So they've got a lot of their guys that have been injured that they are expecting to return, and they should be at a, unfortunately for us, maybe at their strongest state by right around the time that we end up playing them, be it the Rams. But they were on a bye, so no playing from them. We'll see what they can do this next week, as I do believe they've got somewhat of a winnable game coming up this current week here in their next matchup. The Green Bay Packers were able to really take it to the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray did not have a very good day on the road in Green Bay. Those 10 a.m. games, they're a bitch, aren't they? They're no fun. And the Cardinals weren't really able to quite run the ball effectively in this game. That's a big part of their offense finding effectiveness, because if they can't run the ball and then it's on Kyler, the offense gets shut down. The defense is so bad that the opposition tends to get a ton of points on them early, and then those teams can kind of just lean on the Cardinals. And the Cardinals, it's not a lot they can do about it because they're not really built to necessarily play from behind. They lost Marvin Harrison Jr. to a fairly bad, not a horrible concussion, but didn't look good. He had to leave the field on that, and that pretty much sunk their hopes at that point. But this was a game where they just were outclassed by Green Bay in every way. And this is one of the reasons I've thought that Green Bay will be one of those teams when it's all said and done at the end of the year, really pushing for that number one bye in the NFC. And if they can get that in the winter, playing in that stadium that they get to play in, that's got the conditions it has, that would be a big feather in their cap come the end of the season. But Cardinals have had a few of these kind of games this year. They are still not ready. That defense is nowhere close to being ready. The offense has got some really good pieces. Trey McBride continues to ascend from the tight end position. But when it comes to Kyler Murray at the quarterback, he still remains what I've thought for a while with him, is it's still a little shaky with him. He's not a bad quarterback, but is he a guy that can carry the team? Is he a guy that can elevate the cast around him? I don't think so necessarily. Not unless you say him improvising and running around all the time at times as him doing that. And I don't think that that's always something they can lean on. I don't think you can always lean on it with his game like you can with Lamar, for instance. 7 carries in this game, 14 yards. A guy like Lamar is always going to be kind of good for at least 5 for 50 or something like that over the course of a game. So Cardinals drop to 2-4. This division remains wide open for everybody. Cardinals, Rams with their one win doesn't matter. Everybody's still kind of in it right now because 3-3 has you in first place in this division. But that is tracking the NFC West. All right. Let's move over to you guys here into the chat. I'd like to see where you guys are at, where you stand maybe with some of this Roy Robertson move. Did you love the move? Am I off my rocker on this one? Is it certainly one that's going to help turn this team's troubles on that defensive side of the ball forward? No, we will definitely shall see. I just want to say in the kind of final passing point on this, that this is going to be a bit of a season where I know that there's impatience from the fan base, and it's impatience that I think is understood and well, how do I put this? It's not wrong, I guess is what I should say. And what I mean by that is that you have a team that has not won a playoff game, but once since 2017. That's going to be 8 years ago here, kind of after this season. It's been a long time. Yeah, we have the Super Bowl in our recent history, and that certainly has had us all kind of somewhat filled to the degree of like, at least we got our ring, got to back-to-back Super Bowls. At least there's that. But there's a point now you reach that I think fans are going, okay, it's been a while. We've had to wait for a bit here. And the Mariners being bad doesn't help matters. They're not being a Sonic team doesn't help matters. The fan base, I think, in Seattle in general is in a place of sort of tapping their toe, going, can we be good at anything? Do we have to suck all the way around? And I think some of that does kind of push the pressure of the situation a little bit on top of the team just not having won in recent history. So I don't want to say that anybody should feel like I'm saying you're being impatient if you wanted them to be winning this year. I would just offer that this is the first year of a new head coach. And I had hoped and I had predicted when we kind of suited out because it looked like everything was kind of coming together fast. And even after that 3-0 start, it seemed to confirm that. But I think we're back to kind of understanding this is going to take a little bit of time, and that he did inherit Coach Carroll roster, and that these players that are on this roster who may be very talented, who may be able to play in this league and excel very well in certain schemes, may not excel as well into this particular scheme for what Mike Macdonald wants. And so he's kind of getting by with those guys right now a little bit, I think, to some parts. Some of it is the onboarding of the process that comes into play with this too, right? So it's all of that, coming in. But I think because of that, we've got to give it the time. When Macdonald came into the Ravens, he was taking over a like defense, a defense that was going to have the same personnel in the same place with the same kind of physical skill set that Macdonald would want. It's not maybe the same case here in Seattle. And so this is going to take a little bit of time for him to get the right players in here to make his scheme work, and also for the players to still learn the scheme on top of it. And I think that does require us to be patient this year, which is going to maybe be hard, as so many, I think, are really wanting so badly for the team to be good. But it's going to be something you hear from me from a common point as we do move forward this year. It's not going to be about reaching conclusions necessarily completely on players and saying, well, done on that, let's get to the end of the year and then we'll make all of our full assessments at that point, in my opinion, because we'll have a better understanding of really where the team is at, what Mike needs, what he doesn't, how close they are versus how far away they are, which I just don't think we can make quite that assessment through 6 games into the season or 8 games into the season or even 10 games in the season. Let's give it that full year and then we'll figure out where we stand. But I think we're going to have to be patient this year as they just look so far away. It's hard to see how you're going to get all of these things cleaned up to get yourself rocket boosted back into, really making a run this year in the here and now. Love to see it. I'd love to see it, but what I do here is analysis, and the analysis from what I've seen the past 3 games is there's a lot for Macdonald to have to clean up here. I thank you guys for watching today. Please do, if you could for me, hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. It helps this channel out, helps me grow. And I do really, really, really appreciate it. I know I'm behind a couple donations. Sorry, I've got my opening thing we do on our Roundup here where I don't always get to donos right out the rip. But Richard Stewartson, always kind in the chat to donate again here today. Thank you, Richard, for that $5 donation. I really appreciate you for that. It's very kind of you. And no note on your dono, just the dono itself. So thank you, brother. Jordan, thank you for the $10 donation. I appreciate you for that, Jordan. And sorry, Jordan and Angry Bucket, a little bit late in acknowledging these, but thank you for the donos. I appreciate it. He says, I know the concern about this trade, but I see this as a Bennett trade where he is undervalued by the league because the team situations he's in. I think he will end up being a steal for us. Well, thank you for the $10 donation again. And I hope you're right on it. I really do hope you're right. I think when you did have Michael Bennett come in here, I think that he was a little bit younger than where Roy is at. You also had Michael Bennett coming off of a 9-sack season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when you had him come in. And yeah, I think, maybe the best for Roy has been like 4 sacks or something. But I'm okay with it where I hope it works out. I really do hope it does work out, Jordan, with it. I just, there is some worries for me on a couple of points with this. I think it's a little bit of a reactionary move, which means that there wasn't the foresight of this is a guy we want to go get, but that who can we go get? This thing's in kind of a broken shape. I worry that that's a part of it. I worry about the cost. Is this the best way to spend $6 million off of next year's cap, understanding the cap is so finite next year, understanding that we are kind of already, behind that 8 ball a little bit as far as what we got financially wise. But it would be nothing but good for us if it can work out. And he is an inside-outside guy to the Michael Bennett comp on that side of it. He can play some 3-tech. He can play some defensive end. So he's got a little bit of fluidity between those 2 parts. He's going to give you a lot of effort. He's a very strong player. So we do see that, Macdonald, like I talked about, the players he wants to bring in is more of the bullying style player, the guy that can go mano-a-mano, and maybe he's not going to beat you with a litany of pass rush moves and be super technician-like in his approach, but that he can just sort of bully you into the backfield. And certainly that's what you get in Roy's game that stands out, especially with that long arm bull rush that he likes to employ, Jordan. So I do hope you are right on that. I hope you are right on that one. And thank you for the dono. Angry Bucket, thank you for the big dono, by the way, $10 at that. So thanks for that. Angry Bucket, thank you for the $5 donation. Should we move Stone to left guard when Lucas comes back? Could he be a better guard than a tackle? It's a good question. And certainly when you have poor left guard play, you want to look at every option on the board that you can look at as a possibility here. Sadly, Stone would not be able to work at left guard. He is legitimately 6'7". So you don't typically tend to see Angry Bucket too many guards in there at that size more often than not. And if they're going to get into that size, then they've got to be real tenacious kind of guys, powerful kind of guys. Stone is more finesse as a tackle than he is a brute. In fact, he's part of the troubles for him and why he's struggling right now, Bucket, have to do with the fact that he's really should be a left tackle purely and not moved over to the right side where you're facing more of those power edges to that strong side of the formation typically. And that gives him problems. So you have the problem of bend and getting low enough to win the leverage war inside. When he goes against those 6'3" defensive tackles, they're going to get right up under his pads. And then he just doesn't quite have the strength and power to really push guys off the line from that interior position. Guys that are going to now weigh 40, 50 more pounds than guys on the edge do at times that he's going up against. So really just should be a backup left tackle in this league. Shouldn't be starting 6, 7, 8 games for you in a season. It's just that's where they've operated outside the ideal on this one, unfortunately. Thank you, though, Angry Bucket, for the $5 donation. Jordan, again, man, appreciate you, too, for that big tenor. And Richard, thanks. Snail, thanks for the $5 donation. McDonald is fine, but I am over the Grubb experience. I hate finesse offense for all the reasons this offense has been wildly inconsistent. Need more. Yeah, there's definitely more this offense should be capable in getting done than they're getting done right now. And I think Grubb is still finding the footing there a little bit. And it's not been necessarily smooth sailing. And some of the decisions to be as pass happy as he's been has been sometimes a bit odd on that side of it. That's where from my perspective, I just want to give them both kind of that full year to figure out, where they land. But this can't continue as a trend where you're, sort of forgetting about your running game or just having no running game for 2.5 quarters. I've also been a bit disappointed by the lack of any sort of fly sweep game or any sort of utilization of Laviska Shenault into the offense. If the offense was humming and you're throwing a DK and he's getting his efficient touches and Jansen's getting his efficient touches and it's all just running up and down the football field, then you can understand it. But if things are struggling, if you're not getting much done in the ground game, if you're not able to pass protect, you've got receivers out there dropping balls, you've got to kind of pivot, I think, as an offensive coordinator to leaning more into some of that gadgety type of stuff to manufacture more and less of just lining it up and rerunning it again. And it's been, for me, the bit of the frustration on both sides of the ball is that rather than us seeing on a weekly basis a wide variance of different styles to what they try to accomplish and change or just do something different, they're sort of just kind of applying the same kind of model all the way around at times, week in and week out on that. But we'll see where it stands at the end of the year on that, Snail. I don't think you're alone on that at all. AI in the house, how you doing? Says the first 3 games, our time of possession was plus 6.5 minutes during our 3 losses, negative 29 minutes. The Giants had a 15-minute advantage. Hard to win like that. O-line stinks. Doubt we improve unless that changes. Yeah, agreed. Let's go see in the house, AI. Daniel, Barry Sports Highlights, how you doing? MJ Seahawk, I'm going to make a controversial statement. We played all 6 games the same. Lots of mistakes, but the first 3 games, those teams did not make us pay for them. Could be very much a point on. Good point. Could very well be the point. I mean, certainly you didn't necessarily run the ball great in those first 3 games, to your point, MJ, right? In both the game with Kenneth, you weren't running until the 3rd quarter. It's so yeah, probably some commonalities there, man. I don't know. It's super controversial. I feel like we did a little bit of more stuff with the fronts and some of the games we were playing with the fronts in the first 3 weeks, but that's more of, I don't have any data to back that up. Dom H, how you doing? It's good to see you. Herbicide, I'm still pissed at the stupid team. I understand the Lions and the Niners, but the Giants, inexcusable. Yeah, you shouldn't have lost the Giants at home. That was a brutal loss, and the fact that you didn't just lose to them where they just kind of stole it away at the end of the game because you couldn't put them away, but rather they were putting you away through most of the game at home was, I think, inexcusable is pretty correct. And part of, I think, where I land with this Herbicide, where I go, it's just hard to see that team that had that happen to them get back around to being a real contender this year. It's almost a little bit like the Rams opening loss of the season last year, where you came out of that going, how does this team, after game one getting beat like that against that team, get this turned into a place where they're going to be a true contender this year and anything but just kind of inconsistent. B-Film, Brand the man. You're the man. B-Film, appreciate you. What's up, Flag? Good to see you in the house, man. Got you on the early side here. Joseph Austin, Lions game took it out of the Hawks. Happens to every team they play. Lions game took it out of the Hawks. Happens to every team they play. They definitely have a way of snatching souls, that's for sure. We saw them just toying with the Cowboys the other night, didn't we? Toying with them. Richard Stewartson says, we definitely need 6 players, offense, defense, within 6 quarterback. We definitely need 6 players. Yeah, we need quite a few guys here. Kevin O'Connell, guys, is a rebuild where McDonald's just trying to save the season. It's a 3 to 5 year plan now for a Lombardi. I think that's right. Duran says, I think RHR, Roy Robertson, is here to provide solid depth. I agree. Patrick, hot take, but Schneider's got to go in the next 2 years if he doesn't address the O-line. He's had his years to address this problem. I'm working on a video right now for the channel that's going to be talking a little bit about the recent history of this offensive line, how we've gotten to this stage of things, and the summation of it is going to be, to your point, Patrick, it's time now to stop this. It's time to stop. This has gotten beyond the point of ridiculousness. It really has. It's gotten to the point where, at this point, they're just being silly about it. The offensive line has been considered and looked at as an insignificant portion of this team by and large for about 10 years. They've almost put more draft capital into the safety position than they have collectively into the offensive line by the picks and the quality of picks that they've put into it. That's on top of the fact when you consider that no offensive lineman through that 10-year period got a second contract with the Seahawks that was drafted by the Seahawks, and they don't spend money on anybody in free agency. And absent the Dwayne Brown trade over that 10-year period, you don't trade for offensive linemen either. So the onus becomes strictly then upon the drafting of the linemen and the development of the linemen. And if that doesn't work, you're screwed. And what do we see on a yearly basis? We get screwed. So it's one place from John Schneider's perspective. I have been screaming about it for about the last 2-3 off seasons to begin the off season. And that's to say, look, make this a point of emphasis, not 6 or 7 on your priority list, but a point of emphasis. Stop trying to squeeze out the final last year of an aged vet who has almost nothing left in the tank. That's not worked. It's not going to work. You know it don't work. So I'd have a hard time 2 years from now. I'd have a hard time if they go through another offseason and this malpractice towards the offensive line again occurs and they again ignore it again. I'd have it after one offseason. I think I'd have a hard time with it because it's been 10 years of this, as I say. It's not a Johnny come lately issue. It's not a, well, 2000 last year was bad and this year's bad. No, 10 years. 10 years. It's enough. I don't care if they're overpaid. I don't care if they're overdrafted. Overpay and overdraft. The price is the price. And it sucks, but we got to stop doing this cheap secondhand parts, old guys on their last legs. It ain't getting it done. Richard Stewart's in NFL in the Seahawks ownership. They have to spend money, not budget, if they want to go to the Super Bowl. Lack of ambition will get them nowhere. Switching coaches won't be the answer. Agreed. Yeah. We've got to give the time with the coaching staff and everything involved here. And it's part of where you'll hear me consistently on this be, I'm not really going to I'm going to try as hard as I can to fight this in reaching certain conclusions too much this year until we get to the end of the season. It'll be hard for us all, I know, on that, but I think that there's nothing to be gained by necessarily trying to get to those conclusions right now, other than you're the fastest to get to that conclusion. And it took everybody else to the end of the season to get there, which I know people sometimes want to do. But from my perspective, it's going to be, let's wait this out and see where it goes. Anderson says, agree wholeheartedly. Patience is the key. I missed a couple of chat stuff. If I missed your deal in the chat, we had a lot of people putting it in the chat, so I might have lost your message in there. Just repost your question if I happen to miss it. Sorry about that. If the Seahawks young head coach needs some more youth on the team, we're not making a run like the Jets need to. That's right. That's right. Hand grenade. I got in an argument with some dude on when B did his video on this trade. Dude was saying he's Byron Murphy's replacement because he's out for the season when there's no info on him being out. Yeah, I mean, by all accounts, what I was seeing today, to your point on this hand grenade, was that, I mean, Murphy's been on the practice field practicing this week, and the expectation is that the team's going to have him back for this game, and that what we were hearing from, I think, Bob Condotta, Seahawks reporter on this, was that the move was not made in reaction to anything having to do with Byron Murphy. So, which I think I didn't think anything really on the first blush of this had to do with that. I always thought it was just them not happy with what they had on the depth side of it and wanting to reinforce that better. Kevin O'Connell says, I don't think Gabe Lucas is coming back. The sands of the hour of this season are winding through the bottom of the glass, right, Kevin? And it's not right now in a place where it's getting more and more positive here. I've been hopeful, but time's winding down here. We're going to be halfway through the season here, still not off the pup, still not out there practicing. I mean, when are we going to do this if it is, you know? Kev Jackson says, do you think Grubb is doing well as an OC? I mean, I'd give him probably like about a B grade right now. The thing with Grubb that he's dealing with, Kev, is he's inherited this offensive line. So this offensive line isn't playing bad because Grubb's scheme is putting them in a position to suck. This offensive line sucks because it's basically sucked for about a 10-year period straight because your general manager utterly refuses to dump the resources into it that would be required to turn it into a strength, or just turn it into a league average crew, right? Not even a strength. I won't get greedy. Just give me the league average. So with Grubb, he's dealing with this. He's dealing with the line that is both one of the worst in the league at pass protection and also one of the worst at creating holes in the running game and winning one-on-one blocks in the running game up front. And when you as an offensive coordinator can't rely on your offensive line to pass protect and you can't rely on them to run block, it does kind of limit you a little bit as an OC in your ability to be successful, even if you have Geno playing as well as he is, even if you have the skill positions on the outside like he has. You kind of need that stuff in what I would call a functional state to still get an upper end offense. And the offensive line, I think even a person that might disagree with me on this no one would say, yeah, they've been in a functional state this year. It is completely non-functional. Let me give you a little bit of a show of this too. If I can find it here. Yeah, here we go. So what I'm showing you here is these would be your top 10 rated PFF quarterbacks right now by PFF. And there are a couple guys in here that got some some tough measurements. The number 3 guy who's got the 15th best pass protection, and then he's got the 29th best run blocking. He's making miracles happen there a little bit, though he's got the pass protection at least, right? The guy down 9th, who is Geno Smith right now, he's 9th in PFF's rating, has got the 27th worst pass protection, and then they have the 16th worst run blocking. So they're dead middle of the road in run blocking. But again, that's also factoring in the wide receivers and how they're run blocking. If you look at some of the advanced statistics in regards to just the offensive line play and them winning those blocks up front, it's not happening. It's much worse than this. The other notable thing on this is the only guy that has worse pass protection than Geno Smith is Derek Carr at number 2 there with the 31st worst pass protection unit. But Derek Carr also has the 8th best run blocking unit in football. And also, what happened to Derek Carr recently? Was he playing out on the football field last week? Or did perhaps that 31st worst pass protection get his butt injured and he was on the sideline and Spencer Rattler's out there playing? So you got to get that stuff improved. And to me, Kev, it makes it a little hard to make an assessment of a guy like Grubb in this situation. I'd say the same thing about McDonald. If he doesn't have the guys who can execute his offense, then it's not about play calling. It becomes about talent, ability, all of that type of stuff. Duran says, I wish they'd give us an update on Abe's knee as to why it's taking him so long to heal. I would too, man. They're usually very upfront with the injury situation. This has been one of the rare ones I've seen where there's so much cloak and dagger going on. And yeah, Brian, I've heard that he's supposed to come back this week as well, being Abe. Fred Palmer, love your show. Always enjoy your perspective. Go Hawks. Well, thank you for watching, Fred. I appreciate the kind words as well, man. And I do appreciate all of you guys watching here on throughout this year. We've had a great season here for growth. We're rolling right along to our 20,000 goal of subscribers. We'll shoot right on past it. So really a good time as well, just to thank all of you guys out there for what's been, I know, a really tough season for our Hawks overall, so to come through for this, but it's been a great one for the channel. And I really enjoyed having a chance to, chop this stuff up with you guys. And we did a 4 or 5 hour post-game discussion stream last Sunday. It was great. People were still in a pretty good place from a head standpoint, which kind of had me surprised. I was expecting more torquing, more tilting going on, but indeed everybody was pretty even keeled. Orthodox Russ, DK, and Lockett will be gone next year, so that'll free up a lot of cap space. DK ain't going to resign with Seattle, no matter how much you disagree with that. I'm open to any outcome that it goes, and there's no telling of where DK's mental state is, and certainly there'll be people that can point to him on the sideline slouching down and some of the body language stuff and say, well, see, he doesn't want to be here. So very well may be the case. And yeah, you can definitely free up some space to get those guys gone for sure. There are some other guys though, too Orthodox, that you're going to have to sign. So it also then doesn't become that just, okay, got the freeze. There's a lot of contracts to do even with those two guys moving on. But if you do move those guys out, say nothing of Gino, you got plenty of space to have a $6 million depth interior defensive line backup. Duran says we need to upgrade both guard spots. Tomlinson's awful. Agreed. Some dumbass was saying the dude is his season replacement when there's no evidence on him being out of the remainder of the season. Well, I can definitely test to people with a ready, fire, aim approach at times on opinions with that type of stuff, Richard Sewardson, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, I do apologize about the misspelling. It's microphone. Oh, no, I do the same thing, too, with the speech-to-text stuff, because my big old sausage fingers, I can't get down those buttons. I'm a horrible texter, so I got to do the speech to talk to, and it never feels like it's getting worse, Richard. I think the thing would improve with time, but I swear it's taking some phrases and turning them weird. Richard says, I don't believe in I don't trust the real liability because domino players have played. Some of the players were consistent. They don't make plays. Oh, I see what it did there to you. Sorry about that, Richard. Maybe I'll be able to figure out what you're saying there. I don't believe in these. I don't trust the real liability because McDonald's players have played. Some of the players were inconsistent. I think the players I think you're talking a little bit about the effort and these guys being capable of doing more from a talent basis. If I'm unpacking what you're saying on your comment there, Richard. And I'd agree with you. I think some of this is not having the exact personnel that would make his team work, but I think some of it too is that these guys have not always been flying around to the ball like you'd like to see on the defensive side of the ball. Just looking at the effort of a guy like Rayshawn Jenkins on that final run with Garendo, like that is not good enough. Joseph says PFF grades don't match eyeball tests quite often. Methodology is suspect. There's some weird games. There's definitely some weird games on some of the scores you see from it. I think it's still a useful tool, but absent you just not having any ability to view tape on a guy, they shouldn't be used as a whole water, evaluation on a necessarily a player in itself. Unless, again, you just haven't had a chance to watch the tape and it's a good shorthand for that. But always it should be paired with what you see from a player on the tape. To your point. What's up, Lou? No worries, Richard. Flag says, man, I'd rather kept Mario Edwards than Draymond. Yeah, probably. Nick says, Rashawn Jenkins has a 20 grade, just absolutely horrid. Yeah, it's awful, and he's got a cast on his hand. But if he's that removed as a player, then get him off the field. And some of that stuff, that last run there, for instance, where Garendo goes untouched, I keep coming back to on the play as we're looking at it. Why are you dropping into depth? What? It seems about as stupid a play. Maybe he was called defensively to do it. Maybe it is just that he was called defensively to drop to depth. But they're running here. And Love is on the other side of the field in his alignment, so he can't get to Garendo. It feels a little like an effort thing there, or just a complete boneheaded play. Sendai, how you doing? Spaces, who's the new guy we traded for? We traded for Roy Robertson Harris. He is a guy, undrafted rookie free agent from 2017, played most of his career with the Bears. Recently has been with the Jaguars. Inside, outside guy, power guy, kind of a power 3 tech is, I guess, if I have to shorthand him the best, I'd say power 3 tech with some ability to play to the outside. Strong hands, good long arm bull rush, more of a pass rusher than a run defender, but high motor, high effort kind of guy. Is he any good? I don't know. He's all right. Nick says Draymond's making like $50 million for a 28 grade. Yeah, it's not doing the trick. Angry Days, Clowney the same position as the Jag dude? No, Clowney's more outside. This guy can do some outside stuff, but he's more inside. Ethan Compton, I believe, will beat the Falcons, even with some guys being gone. We just have to get that winning mentality without mistakes. I like it, Ethan. I think to your point, if I can piggyback off of your point with this, you've done a lot of times shooting yourself in the foot here in these games that's really hurt you. And if you can remove some of those self-inflicted wounds that are controllable, you'll give yourself much better opportunity to be in these games to win them at the end. Less of the just horrible turnovers by the offense that don't sometimes make much sense. I'm not talking a tip pass that gets picked. I'm talking a completely horrible throw or an unnecessary throw from Geno at times. A kick returner fumbling the ball, a punt returner fumbling the ball, giving defense on a short field. These are things that are a little bit, I think, more controllable. And one that you'd like to see them try to fix up. Maybe you don't have the talent defensively, get better offensively or defensively, but you can, I think, try to do better to take care of the ball. Something that stands out to me about, for instance, the Cardinals more often than not, is that they don't tend to shoot themselves in the foot. They understand their talent is light. They understand that they can't be penalty ridden. They can't have a lot of turnovers if they want to win football games. And they stay more often than not in that place, in that mode of things. And we do not, as we're also fairly well penalized on top of it. So just eliminate some of the mistakes within your control and could give yourself a much better chance in this game, Ethan, to your point. Jordan says, from the all 22 I've seen, he hardly ever loses at the point of attack and doesn't get pushed back, has good pass rush, and gets off blocks pretty well. There we go. Richard, I do not trust this PFF rating. Money of the players are just not good enough. I don't trust this PFF ratings. Monies of the players are just not good enough. I think it's right to be your guys are right to be a little skeptical with the PFF stuff. I think it is still a useful tool, and NFL teams throughout the league are using PFF as a tool, but it should not be as solely everything is based around this alone to the point. You got to bring all the factors in that you can. Hans Jenkins was playing with a wrist brace or something like that? Correct. Yeah. I meant many players are not good enough. Oh, okay. That makes a little more sense. Yeah, I agree with you. .360 bets. Murphy and the new defensive tackle could really help rushing defense against the Falcons. They could. I don't know how much Roy gives you as a run defender, really. And from my perspective on watching his tape, he's active and he'll try hard. He gives you effort for sure. But I don't know if I'd say there's anything that in his history has pointed to him being he's more of a pass rusher than a run defender. Nick says, I'm worried Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier will run all over the Hawks. He probably should be, man. It's been where we've been problematic, and those are very talented running backs. Richard said this is a big problem for their Seahawks defense when a team is just going to play the running back. Hand grenade says, did you watch Brendan's video on if our offense has a tell when they get on the field? I didn't have a chance to check it out, no, but it would make sense. It's something I was wondered myself, especially in the running game where teams just know every time when we're going to run it and where we're going to run it. And we're never surprising teams in that way. Yeah, Dodson's effort was horrible on that play, Jordan. Can we get Kobe Bryant in for Jenkins? I'm ready to about make that transition. I mean, especially with Jenkins having the cast on his hand. I not knocking him. It's hard to play with a cast on your hand, but let's try something else out at that point. And Jarek says Jordan says we may also be getting our other safety back soon. Jarek Reed got activated off the PUP, so maybe that is a guy that can come into the fray here. QB1 Sam Howell says, I don't think offense is as much a problem as the defense right now. Defense allowing too much explosive plays. Agreed and agreed there, Sam. All the way around on that. Defense is definitely the biggest problem in the room here by a wide margin. And yeah, we got the NFC Roundtable. Will be going on tonight, 6 o'clock. I'll be over there on that channel side of it. So, going to be taking my medicine. Going to be taking my medicine. You know that. For sure, if the opposition play the pass play, we must have defenders marking them as don't touch, just block the pass. Yeah, Pumpkin gave us a winner, folks. There's hope yet. What's up, Tony Wright? Good to see you in the house, man. We're going at this week. We're going at it. Richard says, yeah, I don't understand. Let's get our ground game going. We got to get it going, Richard. Marty says, we won't if that's the... Sorry. It's good to see you, Marty. How you doing, too? Hans says, I didn't like the Leonard Williams trade, especially if you could draft Frazier or BB with that second. They turned out like good picks this far. They did, yeah. And maybe the way you could have gone with it, for sure. Nate says, John Schneider will hold us back, I feel, if he keeps refusing to see the importance of the trenches. I'm in the same boat on this. It's been, I think, a long problem. I like what he's done defensive line to really try to stock that up, but offensive line needs to now be the one that gets the kind of the attention on this one, and badly at that. Morgan says, drafting 2 running backs in the second round makes no sense if you won't draft strong linemen. Correct, yeah. I mean, it's if your line is a complete sieve, but you got these really talented running backs, they get neutralized by and large. Not that they can't find effectiveness, but they're just neutralized to how effective they can be because your line is just so bad. Kevin says, I think Clowney's the only appropriate move. Otherwise, hunker down. I'm in the same boat. That would have been the move I would have made instead of this other one myself, even though they're not the same position. So I don't think the interior defensive tackle position is going to be the problem for us moving through the rest of the season, whereas edge very well could be, given the fact that you don't know if you're getting Uchenna back at this point. Trevis Gibson's not giving you anything off that side of it. And both in Hull and in Mafe, you have 2 guys that are beat up and working through injuries. But I also don't mind if they just want to stand pat at this point. Let it play out. Ricardo, I do like that Mike McDonald isn't content to keep rolling out the same guys over and over and hoping for change. If the guys at the bottom of the roster aren't up to snuff, keep turning them over. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Jordan, I'm not sure that Adams is going to change a lot for the Jets either. They do have now 2 dynamic receivers on that outside, but the Jets seem to have a lot of extra problems here. And boy, the firing of Saleh to me is especially one where you go, oof. So we've got Aaron Rodgers running this show now, pretty much. He says, yeah, our opponents get stronger before we face them. Great. Yeah, it's not ideal. Nagasa says we needed depth. Young, Morris, and Adams aren't really NFL caliber players, not even for a few snaps. I certainly wouldn't push back that we need depth there, Nagasa, for sure. I don't, if we're going to get depth, let's get some good high quality depth. I don't know that this guy, the thing with making this move is a move. I don't know that this guy necessarily is as good as some people kind of talk him up and what I've seen from him and what his history backs up. He's a guy that gets you a couple sacks a season and he works really hard, but I don't know if he's necessarily all that in a bag of chips on the side. I don't know if he's necessarily really that big of an improvement on Morris. The other thing with that too, Nagasa, then we got to look at it and going, well, at what point do we start to look at some of this of saying, okay, you got to go get this depth because these guys aren't good enough, but I got all these guys that you've drafted in recent years that now aren't developing or showing any worthwhile ability to help the team to the point now you have to go trade true future draft capital to fill this hole. When do we start doing some of the secondary steps on that process? Beyond just that, well, we got to go get more depth, but then get back to the root cause, the roots issue here, which is, okay, why are we scrambling to make these moves? Why is it every month here in the season so we're having to scramble to make these kind of moves? That seems to be a little bit of a indicator that there may be a bigger problem by and large at play. Grandizer, apologies. Just saw you go live, Brando. Do you have a Falcons content creator collab with your Behind Enemy Lines? I do indeed. We'll be doing it on Thursday instead of Tuesday this week, Grandizer. So some of these guys just have different schedules and stuff. I shoot for Tuesday, but just got to kind of move it around a little bit. But we've got Pound for Pound Atlanta, a YouTube channel out there. Will be coming on Thursday, and I think it's I think we're 5:30 Eastern, so I think it's like 2:30 or something like that our time. Nate, yep, we need to stop throwing the ball 50 times a game. Agreed. AC Journey says at least run some RPOs with pass last resort. I can go for that. Jordan says the last game we tried running a lot and it didn't work because our O-line can't run block well enough. Correct. Yeah, it's the thing with it that makes it hard on Grubby is he can try to stay committed to it, but if you're not getting anything but a yard or two, or you're getting penetration or push in the backfield and it's turning you into 2nd and 11 rather than even a 2nd and 7, it gets hard to stick with it. It does get hard. Audie Bell, Brandon, I see changes coming at offensive line, defensive line, and linebacker. You got to let the young man install his program. Tom Landry, Chuck Noll, Bill Walsh, all flopped in their first year. 100% agreed, Audie. And I mean, if anybody's wondering out there, again, on my standpoint with this, you're going to find me very much at the forefront, and you're going to hear me repeat myself over a lot of times on this, just because I will hear it from the people that'll be on the other side of that, Audie, from where you're at, with my chat, where they'll say, okay, this didn't work this year. We just got to go. We got to gym more of him. I will not do that in any way, shape, or form. I've seen already way more from Mike McDonald in this first year from him and what he's trying to accomplish here than he's much more, I think, well suited to be a head coach than what Mora was at the NFL level with his mentality and some of his emotionalness that existed. But you're absolutely right. We got to give this time, and there can't be any jumping here this needs to happen fast or else it's a failure. I think that would be, that is the approach of bad organizations. That's the approach of a Cleveland Brown organization. That's the approach of a Carolina Panther organization. We're not aspiring to be like them. And we're going to give this thing its time that it's going to need and trust the long-term, future of it. And when it comes to McDonald, I don't have any trepidations with him as far as, getting this thing to the right stage long-term. But we got to give it that time. Patience, patience, patience. Richard, got to use the running backs. You're right. And if there are no ground holes to be had there on the running, use some of these plays like I showed earlier in the stream. With our play call of the week, go back and, why can't we go through and run the tunnel screen 6 times over the game to a running back like this? Let me show the play again here. Boop, boop, boop. Why can't we just go to this over and over again? If it works, if you're getting 7, 8, 9 yards a pop on it, keep going to it. Keep going to it. Catch defenses dropping back to depth to take away the deep throws from us. You got the defensive line for the opposition trying to get to the backfield quickly, running up past their lanes, giving you time to then get a guy like Charbonnet here downhill on these kind of runs. You ran it a few times this past game. Run it 5, run it 6, run it 7 times. Manufacture those touches, those back. Get the ball in their hands and let them work. Agreed. Calm Cow. Hey, Brandon. I love DK. But what's your opinion on DK yelling at Grubb in the end of the game? It kind of irritates me. DK has the balls to yell at Grubb while he fumbles and drops passes. Ridiculous. It's not a good look. I don't have as much of a problem necessarily with the headset deal. We can read the lips now. I mean, he says please twice. He's yelling it, which, you don't want him yelling at his coach, but he's also saying please, can we please throw it past the sticks, please. So hey, threw please in there twice at least. I appreciate that. I don't like the slouching over on the bench thing that he does. That part to me is, I don't like that body language. It's a very emotional sport. And I've seen sideline outbursts and people screaming and yelling from a variety of teams. I've seen Richard Sherman on the sideline absolutely losing his stuff after he just gave up big plays over the top. He's over there screaming and yelling after basically he blew his coverage. To your point, Calm Cal, a lot of like what you're seeing with DK on this. DK certainly has to shoulder some of the burden for his own failures this year, from penalties to fumbles, and how that's hurt the team. And he's got to eat his part of it. And to your point, that you would expect him to be more Calm Cal in a point of being more poised and understanding of, yeah, this is in bad shape, but I'm part of the reason this is in bad shape. Also part of the reason it's in good shape. I think the other parts that come into this that get frustrating, and the parts that fans don't really want to give a lot of this to, is that, DK is going through a season right now where he's trying to earn a contract. And he's trying to go, put up the production that's going to get him the kind of money that's going to be really maybe his final big, huge contract that he can get in this sport. And maybe he's felt like he's been reduced in his ability to get to that level of productivity like his buddy A.J. Brown, because he doesn't have an offense that can get the most out of him and hasn't been getting the most out of him. There's two plays that stand out in this game. Yeah, there's the drop pass and the over route that the guy undercuts, but there's the deep bomb down the field that Geno misses and just gets the ball to him a little bit late. Everybody on that play is talking about how Geno's hit as he throws it, but Geno wouldn't be hit as he throws it if he threw that ball earlier than he did. If he just let it rip. Instead, Geno wanted to see DK open down the field on the 9 and threw it late and allowed the defender back to him. DK gets the top down the defense later, and Kenneth Walker's moving for some reason prior to the snap. So that play gets wiped off the board. How you see, just take what he was saying to Grubb in the microphone there where he's got the headset on. Please, can we throw past the sticks? And Grubb can't have him go past the sticks. Why? Because pass protection doesn't hold up long enough for him to get past the sticks on those routes. And so it is frustrating. There's some of this that's outside of his control. There's some of it's inside his control. But I think that the intensity of it gets ratcheted up that much more when you're heading into basically what is a contract year. And especially when it's on the back of what's been in recent years, Calm Cow, of very much a lack of an ability to really get him acclimated in this offense. This is the first time we've ever had him moving in motion. This is the first time we've ever had him operating out of the slot. And he's been really effective in doing that. But we haven't done it for the previous 5 years of his career. So then does that mean that maybe DK is a little bit right in a mentality of saying, you guys could have gotten more out of me here during my time? You guys have not made me as much a centerpiece as other offenses would have? And so it isn't to me as white and as black and white of DK's this emotional diva and da-da-da-da-da-da. I think that there's a lot into it that's going on. I think that players and coaches will yell at each other at times. Even guys that love each other like Andy Reid and Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl last year looked like he was about ready to beat the hell out of Andy Reid, screaming at him to throw him the ball, right? And I know that Kelce certainly has more pelts on the wall and has earned maybe more of a right to do that, but the stuff happens. It's not ideal, but I don't doubt that DK cares. He's doing all he can. So I guess as I boil down to it, I just don't have as much of an issue with it as others may have with it. It's not that I'm confounded by those that have issues with it. I get where you're coming from. Those that would be like, I don't like this. This is a huge red flag for me. It's just not quite to that level of place for me on my side of it. Nate Smeltzer says the probability of turnovers increasing due to the amount we are throwing the ball. Yes. correct, especially when you're up around those 54 attempts. I'm misspelling again. I said we must pressure teams in the offense and the backs. Pressurized. We must pressure teams in the offense and the backs. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you there. Nate says, why are we trying to expect Geno to be perfect on 50-plus throws? I wouldn't expect him of that. Jordan says, until we get an offensive line that can be average, this isn't going to be fixed no matter how much you run the ball or pass it. Probably not. That's very much as much probably the root problem at play here, and I think that's a fair one to say. Richard says, I don't think the microphone's listening to my words. I do apologize for the spelling. No worries, Red. As long as I'm not getting it wrong there, Richard. I was like, I can almost kind of see what it's saying. Hans says, the second pick is totally on DK. There are a lot of film studies pointing the bad route out of DK out. So a lot of picks this year are not on Geno, but he gets the stats. Yeah, so I've seen a lot of people, Hans, making the assumption and determination that DK is the one that's responsible for that interception. First off, I want to disagree with folks in the way of nobody knows for sure on that play what is the call and what is the route to be run. Everyone on that, Hans, is making a guess in that moment. I've also looked at the play over and over again, and Geno throws that ball post that corner closing on the route. If DK brings that route in tighter on an in-cutting route, the ball is still on the cornerback. The throw is not supposed to be underthrown to the body of the receiver. The throw is supposed to go out in front. So even if DK runs the sharper route, in my opinion, the corner is still there to knock the ball away. It's still a piss-poor throw by Geno. Could DK run a little bit of a tighter route? Yeah, maybe. But could the throw have been more out in front and throwing it with more ability to put it out there for DK to get it and then use his speed to then create the separation on the route that wouldn't have been there, by that driving of the route by the cornerback? Because the cornerback was sort of sitting and squatting on that route the whole way. So I've seen the assessment of people, making the armchair determinations that they're sure it is. I don't think anybody knows for sure on that one, to be, in my opinion. And again, even if he's not running the route rounded, the corner's driving. If you watch it, they're driving on the route almost before DK even makes the cut. And it's far before Geno starts to, wind up and throw. And Geno's the whole time staring down the route. So it's not like Geno's coming to it late on his reads and his head has to snap over and just throw it off of instinct. He's staring down the whole play over there. So I come back to it's more to Geno on that play myself, not to let DK completely off the hook, but I think it's hard to say that's just completely all on DK on that play, as many have said. Erickson says should have heavily addressed both lines in the offseason. Should have done it for a couple off seasons now. Kevin O'Connell says, I do find it fascinating that through the years we can't seem to get some dogs on our O-line, just always fillers and one and dones. It comes down to putting the resources into it versus not. For Russell Wilson, through the years, once Russell got paid, once Marshawn Lynch got paid, once the Legion of Boom got paid, the team was paying so many guys that they had to go light on a given area. So they said, okay, we're going to go light on the offensive line. Russell Wilson will be able to scramble away from all of the pressure he'll be inundated with. And when Marshawn Lynch doesn't have a hole, he'll just create a hole and we'll be fine. And then they sort of kept that mentality even after those guys had moved on, even after you weren't paying as many guys, they still sort of kept in that pocket. And they've not changed their approach. They've continually done sort of the same approach. And while I did like 3 years ago, John Schneider finally starting to really invest in the offensive line from the draft, not just simply picking a guy like once a year thing, but actually a couple picks a year being ascribed to the actual line itself, he still wouldn't go out there and make a trade, still wouldn't go out there and spend money. Still wouldn't even spend money on a guy that you drafted for a second contract. And that's where it's easy to see why this line is so bad right now. All these other teams have all these other pathways to improving their offensive line, and you're taking this one narrow hallway and saying this is the only way we can improve our line, and it's not enough. Jeff Krakowak says, fix the offensive line. Nobody wants to watch bad football. Amen. Calm Cow, is it really overdrafting and overpaying if the whole league does it? At this point, it's just going against the consensus and thinking we are smarter than everyone else. Agreed. And no, you're right. It's at this point becomes a spot, Calm Cow, where it becomes, look, this is the price of admission. It's not about, oh, it's overinflated. It's well, it's the price of admission. And you can be mad and get pissy and angry about that, or you can accept that this is the cost of doing business in this day and age in the NFL for this particular position. And it's been one that they do not want to make their peace with. And you're going to need to do it this offseason and in a major way, or this is going to continue to be a major problem for years to come. Nate, we lost turnover battle the last 3 games. We've had a hard time tackling. Running the ball is seen as a weakness by the coaches, and we have fought in all those games. We're not that bad. We're not bad. We're just coming together here. MJC, I could forgive the neglect of O-line during the Wilson era. He ran around too much for a normal offensive line. If you want to win with Geno, you need to give him time. Yep, I'm the same way. Understandable why you made the move as you did during the Wilson era. Again, because it wasn't just the paying of Wilson, it was the paying of Marshawn. You wanted to pay some skill position players. You wanted to invest all over that defense. And with the finite cap, somebody then is some positional group's going to have to pay the price. And I think you're right about, there was a bit of an educated tactical decision made here where you go, look, Russ wants to hold the ball for over 3 seconds in the pocket. You know, having an offensive line that's going to be built for a guy that's getting it out on time and giving him clean passing lanes to throw to, it's going to be kind of wasted if we go that route with him. So let's do this other thing. So I understood it, but it makes less sense when you start to move on from Russ 3 years ago and you still have, you know, kind of the same issues, same kind of line play in place that you did before. Skylar Duggins, I think it's important to remember that a lot of our coaching staff, it's the first time they've been in their roles. So it's a lot of learning for everyone. Great point, Skylar. Great point. And patience is definitely something that I think the fan base needs to really try to apply here, as hard as that may be. Get the frustration. I get how long it's been since we've been to even the playoffs to win, but got to give it that patience and time. Agree with you. Richard says, we're number 12. I believe in U.S. Seahawks forever. Let's go, Richard. We are 12. George says, the entire NFL looks beatable because only one team has played stellar the entire year. It's true. Very true. Hans says, ask yourself how many All-Pros are on this team. Then how many great players? Then good. Well, conclusion is that we're not there yet to make a deep playoff run. Yeah, I think that's fair. Mythic says, I'd cut more slack if he was failing, at least trying something new. I lose a lot of faith, however, seeing him run the exact same stuff as the last coach. Not writing off McDonald, but I'm confused. I have the same confusion as well, and I think it's a fair criticism of McDonald at this point. Completely okay giving him more time. I'm kind of over us losing by the same methodology of approach that we've lost the last couple of years. It's not stopping anything. It's not causing the defense to play well at all in any respect of what you're asking them to do. It's time for Mike to start getting in his bag a little bit. It's time for him to start showing, you know, again, to your point, even if it doesn't work, doesn't have to work. This is the key part of this, on this criticism. Try different things. You're supposed to come here with a bag, and instead I feel like you came here with a pouch with what you've been running out there defensively. And maybe they just don't understand the details of it, and it's too complicated, and it takes 10 games to get there, and we could come to find that out. But I think your criticism's right in that the defense and how they're losing right now, 4-man fronts, soft zone coverage, dropping to depth, you're losing in the same manner by which you've been losing in recent years. And that part frustrates the hell out of me, and I don't really get it either. As you say, it kind of confuses me. Richard said, did everybody see comments about Pete Carroll should not be involved? He must stay retired. I think Pete's not involved necessarily, Richard. I think he's pretty much, I know there's a camera thing that happened with him and McDonald talking the other night, but I think he's very much out of the picture, or has been out of the picture here, you know, for the most part. Sean S. says, chemistry is something that doesn't get talked about enough. You can have the most talented players, and if chemistry isn't there, then it's hard for things to come together. Very true, Sean. Very true. It's also that hard thing to quantify, when you see it, when it's there and when it's not. I think you know it if you're in the locker room, but from a fan's perspective, hard to know when it is necessarily always there or missing. But you're right. Flagstaff says, casts don't make you take horrible angles play after play. Agreed. With Rashawn, I can't just pass it off to the cast thing. Seahawks gaming safeties are a weird position for McDonald. He had Kyle Hamilton and Geno Stone, and this season, according to PFF, Stone is the worst safety in the league on the Bengals. Yeah, it is a weird position. It asks you to do a lot of things, but he had Marcus Williams there too, Seahawks gaming, so they had kind of the 3 safety stuff out there. But yeah. Definitely Geno, not the same guy he was last year, and Mike put him in that position. Ornosity says, not a lot of chemistry. People forget we have like 5 or 6 players on D that it's their first year. True. Colin, we have 11 days of rest to sturdy the op. No more excuses now. We need to play competitively. These last 3 games have been not even close, even though the score says it. Agreed. I'd like to see us be able to give a little bit more fight in these games and not look, not get so kind of embarrassed. Richard says, I believe in budgeting wages, not being outrageous on player wages. I think you got to be careful, Richard. If you're going to spend $50 million on one player, you got to be certain on that decision. And as we're seeing with a lot of these contracts given out to these quarterbacks, especially up at that mark, the teams are not being certain. Michael Greasy Smith says, Draymond's been a joke since we got him. He's not played well. And it is what it is there at this point. It's been underperforming like hell, and it's brutal when you watch Zach Allen, the other guy that we were looking at there and thinking about bringing in, and we went the wrong direction on that route. I do think Richard Walker's one of the better backs in the league. Another guy's going to benefit heavily if you can get him some run blocking, some actual holes to work with. Ricardo, Hawks Nest, why is our team so bad at tackling run defense? Is it a motivation personal issue, or is it players not knowing the scheme? Well, I think that you've been historically over the last 5 years, every single season, I think you've been right around there as one of the worst tackling teams in the NFL. At least the last 3 years, this has been the way. So I think, Ricardo, there was a lot for Mike to have to clean up in the lack of good tackling. I think the tackling issue is one that's kind of a league-wide issue that you see growing as a problem. It's just hard to do with the lack of padded practices and inability to train these players and prepare these players. Is some of it some of the buy-in of spirit there from the players that you're getting all you can? I mean, maybe that's a bit of it. Is some of it, Ricardo, the fact that you've had a defense over the past 2-3 years that spends too much time on the football field because they can't get off the football field, so then they end up losing time in possession more, so they end up getting wore out, and then you're seeing these bad lack of tackling moments after the team is completely gassed. It's probably all of that stuff to some measure of impact and degree. What should carry more weight versus another, I don't necessarily know on that, but it is a thing that I think is not just one little adjustment fixes it. It's going to take a different personnel and probably a little bit of time to get this thing better improved. Nick says the run defense hasn't really improved. It's always just trash. Yeah, agreed. And yeah, Richard, you got to give Mike McDonald at least another season. I mean, I might even be willing to give him 3. I don't think there's got to be a rush here at all, especially considering what he needed to fix and what needed to be improved upon. Please do hit that like button, as Kevin says. Like the video. We got well over 160 people here in the chat today. If we get those likes up, I'd appreciate it. Sean Thompson, Brando, you're the Mando. You're even better than Mike Sando. Go Hawks. Shout out the one and only Miss Pumpkin. Well, thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. We got Pumpkin. She's deep in sleep right now. She got a little salmon earlier on her pumpkin pick. So she's got the salmon sweats just chilling right now. But thank you, Sean. I appreciate that, man. Love Mike Sando. He's good at what he does. Nate says having 4 running backs just dusting away is a big waste when we could have more depth on the O-line. Agreed. Dallin Deal. Hey, B, in theory, if Roy hits marginally, would we save considering money if we cut Draymond Jones and replaced his spot with Roy's? either this season or next, most likely. I wish we got Zach Allen instead. You're with me on that one, Talon. And you're in a little bit of a difficult situation with Draymond Jones because of the fact that you've chosen to basically restructure his contract prior to the year and get yourself kind of further in bed with him a little bit. So for the 2025 season right now, Draymond Jones carries a $16 million base hit. His signing bonus is at $9 million. So cap hit collectively is $25.65 million. So essentially, yeah, you would save the money that you would save by cutting Draymond Jones. You're going to be sitting on a bunch of dead money still. But the money that you would save by cutting Draymond Jones, for the most part, could be put over there. I think there's a per game bonus thing that makes this a little bit muddled for me. Because right now they've only got you with $14 million on saving. Yeah, they don't even have you. You know, it's like you're still $14 million dead money. They have you on the hook there with it. Yeah, and you got voidable years on the Draymond Jones deal after this. Oh my God, this contract is just awful all the way around. So kind of, yeah, kind of. You could do that, Talon. The contract's a little bit rough though. There's not a lot of money to be saved this year moving off of it. It's kind of cakey. Brian E says those expecting a Super Bowl out of the gate are probably rooting for the wrong team. We gave Pete 4 years to get us to a Super Bowl, and honestly, I think JSN, Mike McDonald will get this one right sooner than later. Love it, Brian. Love it, and I agree. Always spy on the opposition. That's how we get clues on how they'll play against us. There you go. Nate says, nah, I'm done with the fans who want us to tank. You aren't a fan if you wish for this team to lose. I don't care about drafting position. It's such a lame strategy and promotes sucking, which is dumb. Agreed. I'm not a tank guy either. More in what I try to sell for this right now for this season is more of just the temper expectations and that we don't operate from something that we expect to be almost kind of mission impossible for McDonald to pull off in this first year and give this that time. But I do want us to compete. I do want us to fight. I do want us to, shoot every shot we've got, to fire. And hopefully we do that. Motive, this new guy is old and has a significant cap number. Might make sense if he was young and upcoming. Yeah. $6 million is nothing cheap. And if he is going to stay on the roster after this year and you're going to move off of Draymond, then I better be feeling his impact for that money. Yeah. Granddad's are right on. Thanks, Brandon. Just wanted to know. Can't wait for the collab. I'm looking forward to it, man. I love doing those behind enemy lines. They're always a lot of fun, and you always learn more about the team you're playing coming out the other end of it. Mike says, we'll see a big change in the next couple of weeks. I think the Seahawks are going to rock. Let's go, Mike. And yeah, Richard, we got to try to get the next game and get up 4-3. We got to win, Richard. I'm not, as I said, we should be competitive. Let's keep going with it. I'm not saying tank in any way. No way. I agree. Tanking doesn't ever accomplish nothing. Nate says, if we start rocking again, then the narrative will change to how the schedule got us at a bad moment. Yeah, if you got back to winning, win the next 3 games, you definitely look back and go, boy, yeah, playing 3 games in 11 days against pretty quality, at least 2 of those opponents being pretty good quality is hard to pull off. Hard to pull off. Yes, gave me Lincoln Thomason for Joel Bitonio, Jeremiah Cousier, and Myles Garrett, who says no. Hey, let's go. I'll do it. All day long. We'll throw him 2 first-round picks and a third for all the, and Lakin for that collective. QB, people hating on DK's body language, but all the best wide receivers in the league have shown bad body language when getting beat. Yeah, that's a good point on this QB1, Sam Howell. It's a bit of the receiver diva thing has gone back for 3 decades. I've seen guys like Jerry Rice in his heyday pout on the sidelines. It's not a good look. I know people don't like it. I'm not trying to excuse it. It's just also, to Sam's point, kind of a commonality for what you get in the position. Guys just kind of are this way. They're wired that way almost. Ricardo says, yeah, DK has nothing on Sherman's outburst. Yeah, Sherman's outburst was so bad the whole team had to gather around him and start jumping up and down to try to just, because he was just about to like lose it, just about. You got the impression of. Jamora says, we're a pass-heavy team, and people started pressuring Grubb to run the ball, even though we don't have the offensive line to do so. Go watch the Lions pass game, laughing out loud. I think you might be referencing someone else on that. But you're right. Yeah, we don't have the run game to run consistently right now. Hans has always been a fan of DK, but the fumbles and drops this year are painful. Still love him and his mentality, but again, the pick last game is on him. He was running an in-breaking route. As I say on this, Hans, I get where you're coming from, and I get that people are with dead certainty that this is the way it is, and that's it. But I'm not as certain that we know that for sure. You know, we think it's that, but we don't know it for sure. We think it's that, but we don't know it's for sure. And even on an in-cutting route there, it's not a good throw. Okay, DK, let's throw out the whole whether we agree on the in-cutting route or not. Was it a good throw? Do you want Geno Smith to be throwing that ball late across the middle as you've got the corner driving as he's staring down the corner? No. And if he does throw that ball, do you want the throw back on the body of DK, or do you want that throw out in front? Because even if DK cuts that route off as an in-cutting route there, it doesn't put that throw out in front of him. It still puts it on his body. It still gives the corner an opportunity to catch up onto the ball. Again, where it comes down to on these plays at times where people will go, okay, 100% of the blame goes here and 0% of the blame goes there. And it's more of there's a percentage basis here on a play on who's getting more or what's really on what with that. And in my opinion, more of the blame goes to Geno, not that DK gets completely off the hook there, but more of it then goes to Geno on the throw. Then I'm going to go to DK on that one. Stale says, B, I've heard too many analysts say they don't know what's going on with Grubb's play design. He abandons the run at the first sign of trouble. His scheme doesn't have good under center or pistol. The under center stuff's been absent a lot. Yep, it's too much, I think, at times in the shotgun. I think he's trying to figure out what does work here at the pro level versus the college level, and it's going to take a bit of time for him to get his system onboarded and to know what does and doesn't work. I think, again, though, from an OC's perspective, if I don't have a running game that can create holes in the ground game consistently, if the running game in these games, if we look at the efficiency of the run game through the first 2.5 quarters of every single one of the Seahawks game, I think that we're going to find that that's really bad efficiency in running the ball. The run blocking has been at its worst through those portions of the game. And then you don't have a good pass protecting unit in addition to that. And so now you're not just calling a game like you would as an offensive coordinator if everything is normal, and you're just getting into your rhythm and you're sequencing plays and you're setting up. Instead, now you're sort of scrambling to try to overcome what is failing there from a foundational level of your offense. You're a league worst crew in pass protection. And it's the thing that I say over and over again. I think that I don't get very much resonance with people on this one, which is that it's not merely to say, yeah, bad pass protection and just kind of overcome that, quarterback. You have bad pass protection and it causes, and I'm talking league worst, folks. I'm not saying, oh, they're about 15. Oh, no, they're about 19th. Oh, no, they're about 22nd. I'm talking league worst pass protection. That causes offenses to fail. Then you build on top of that crap cake an inability to run the ball. And now we get to the spot of it, what do you want the OC to do? You guys can't create any holes in the running game. You can't pass protect. I can only do so much from a creative game calling standpoint of things. Could there be more that Grubb does here? Sure, but But I think that the degree of difficulty has also been heavily increased on him to make this work when those kind of root things within your offense that you just kind of need to at least be functional are not functional, are in many ways just failing. Nate says, how much capital could we even get with DK when he's consistent and has attitude issues? Well, I think that there would be teams that would be willing to trade for him into the offseason, but I don't think that you're going to get, to your point, maximum draft capital return for DK. And, you're talking about the best of the best probably being a late first round pick. And, a pick that will be later than the one that you selected for Jackson Smith and Jigba. So you want to trade a DK Metcalf for a Keon Coleman? Kind of what you'll be doing. Yeah, it says first 3 games, the time possession was 6.5 minutes. Last 3 losses, negative 29 minutes. I don't see that improving with this line. We need to trade back and triple down on O-line next year. Triple down, AI. You need to draft multiple guys. You need to sign a guy, true quality in free agency, or make a trade for one. It needs to be absolutely hammered. It's all good, Richard. I understand what you're saying, man. And again, we got to think about the Geno Smith thing. We got to think about and have a good, calm discussion about it. I think it's more of an off-season thing to see where the season plays out. And that's where comes to DK or Geno. I don't think that we have to make these calls right now. And we really want to give it the full season to let this thing fully get to the other end of it and see where it's at that point. See how it all kind of shakes out in the wash. Nate says, can we not have a fan base that recycles quarterbacks after they have one bad game? I would hope so, Nate. Some of it is the confirmation bias that occurs here a little bit with Geno, where the anti-Geno folks are somewhat at times laying in the weeds, laying low there. And a game like this gets to confirm some of what is there in those biases that exist in them. I'm still very much a backer of Geno, and I don't think that one bad game makes neither his season or what he's given us as a consistent performance over the past 2 years. It does become a complicated issue and a discussion that we have to have at the end of the offseason when it comes to where do we want to stand on whether to pay him or not. And some of it's complicated because it's taking into account age. What's his cost going to be? How close really is the team? Are they ready to do? Where's the offensive line at? Do you want to pay a 34-year-old quarterback if you're going to again be trotting out almost a league worst unit again next year? Probably not. So, got to just kind of take that into account. The Gavin KG, who's the DC for the Seahawks? Alan Durd? Be more Seahawks. B, if Abe Lucas comes back, does he help Bradford? I don't think that he helps Bradford. He significantly helps your offensive line. I think you've got Stone Forsythe, I think, has given up like 32 pressures in the NFL, by far the most for any tackle, and by far most for any right tackle. The next most pressures for the right tackle beneath him is like 19, so he is in his own stratosphere there. But I'm not sure it would help all that much for Bradford. Josh asks, it's always nice to have the young, shiny quarterback, but it could always be worse. Would you rather have Will Levis? Yeah, I think Geno Smith's a really good quarterback. I do. Kevin says, after 6 games of the season, 12-1, Geno bench, DK traded, and the new coach fired. Josh, I wonder what the Falcons would want for Penix. Cousins is working out for them. They may let him go if someone comes right, and he'd fit well here. Probably not going to move him. Yeah, here, Josh. The first round contracts are fairly substantial at this point. So to move a guy like, I'm going here to take a look, by the way, at the actual price here. But to go move this quarterback, you're going to have to eat a little bit of dead money to make that happen. $22 million, $23 million of dead money if you were to move Michael Penix. So that just sort of makes it a no-go point completely. Chad says it's going to take a year or so. Then the Seahawks will definitely be an elite team. It's called chemistry. Let's go. Josh says, I had a cat named Pumpkin that passed away a couple of years ago. Y'all have no idea how much I love this cat. No, I do, man. Orange cats are really unique, Josh, and I've had this one here since she was a kitten. She's by my side every broadcast. She's always here running being my co-pilot, and they're great. The orange cats have their own kind of personality. You know, there's a reason that there's a Garfield book based on an orange cat. They're wired their own kind of unique way, and yeah. Hans, thank you for celebrating 10 months, almost a year, as a member of the channel. I really appreciate you for that support. He says, haha, okay, B, let's settle on 50-50 for the Geno DK play, or as Mike said, it's a team interception. Laughing out loud. Totally good with that. Totally good with that. I'll take 50-50, man. I'm with the compromise. I'm with the compromise completely. Thank you, Hans. Richard says, I love this program. We're the Seahawks, and we've got the best cat in the world, Pumpkin. She's so beautiful. She is. She's awesome. She's so sleepy after all the salmon today. She ate her salmon. She ate some of the sister salmon. My other kitty's kind of struggling right now. My other cat's got a UTI right now. I'm trying to bottle feed her this cranberry stuff. Gavin says, also, it seems to me like the Hawks have not been ready. Like they have no idea what plays are coming out of certain formations. Agreed. Which conversely, on the offensive side of the ball, it seems like defenses are a little ahead of what we're running and what they're seeing being run. Joe Lopez, I kind of wish we were to lose so that we could get our quarterback for the future and then fortify the trenches. I'd be willing to sacrifice this year. There's many that purport to kind of wanting to see this as an approach, Joe. It's a tough approach to go with because it doesn't always tend to typically work out the way you think ideally. I think another part that makes it hard about this particular year when you look at the quarterbacks coming out in this draft, they're not particularly good. You might be in a position to be picking number 2 overall, number 3 overall, and you're looking at the quarterback there available and you're going, I guess we're going to go with a lineman, you know? So it's on the unfortunate part of this particular season. What I'm seeing from the college is that this ain't like last year's draft. There's not a cavalcade of guys to be picked in the first round. There'll be guys taken in the first round, but there'll be a lot of stretching, a lot of acrobatics being done to validate selecting those quarterbacks so high. John Robinson says you can shoot all the shots you want. It seems we're always going off half-cocked. Kind of would have liked to tear down to the studs approach before building up. How do we get out of middle purgatory? Well, I think that you touch on it a little bit in your note there, John. And it's not going to be one that maybe is an answer that people want to hear, but atypically what I think I've seen from most coaches when they come in like this, John, and if you're coming in with a new general manager, this would be what you see too, is that the first year is not the year where you flip out all the parts. The first year is an assessment year. Let's take stock of what we got, what will work for the now, what will work in the future. And then you see, I think, more of those kind of extreme moves come down the line a little bit to the year 2 part of that. So I think that there's a real potential here. Part of it really does, not part of it, all of it really depends, I think, John, on how the whole year plays out. Is the offensive line still in the same shape it's in? Is the defense got a little bit of that feeling of lack of buy-in maybe from some of the players that are on this defense? And so you've got to flip them out for guys that will buy in. You know, how far are you really out? And if you're closer with the guys by the end of the year and this thing comes around and looks better by the end of the season and almost get in the playoffs or close to the playoffs, less likely that you're going to be seeing that more tear down and more of a, okay, we're close, we can get locked in. But if it does go sideways, John, I think that there's a big argument to be made on that at that point that, okay, now as much as maybe you would have liked to have seen him tear it down the prior year, if the hope is to get out of purgatory, if the hope is to get out of that in-between state, then we're going to have to take the strong move to make sure that that doesn't happen. And that may mean doing a little bit more tear down to get it to that spot of things, which isn't what fans will want to hear at that point. And again, not what I'm prognosticating will happen, but only under the auspice that maybe you're not able to have the season that you thought you were going to be able to have, that we got to move on from more of the players that we thought might be part of the foundation than truly are. So it's an assessment to made after the year, but as I always say with the 4 states that teams can find themselves in, John, and one of those states being in between, or as you call it, purgatory. If you want to get yourself out of purgatory, then you got to stop snapping yourself into place every offseason thinking you're this close to getting to contention and start to understand that you need to make sure you're tried and true in your fundamentals and that you truly have that foundation in place. Not that you kind of think you have it, but you really do truly have it in place. John says, honestly, if that route is an option route on both of them, they have to be on the same page. That's where that's where, and Hans land in the same place. I'm completely good on the 50-50 on that for sure. Richard says, what gets me is if a pass is wrong for DK, he gets blamed because he said it was wrong. He's the best receiver in the NFL. Sorry. Yeah, it kind of butchered your voice to text on that one. Josh, I get the trust me, I do, but why wouldn't you want to help your team as long as you're still getting... Oh, sorry, you guys are having a conversation about the money. Ricardo says, Geno seemed off against San Francisco, like he was a half step off with all of his throws. Geno was odd in the game. I don't know why it was. He was under pressure, but he was under a little more pressure than he's been recently, where he has stepped strong in the pocket and stepped into throws. I thought he was mechanically falling off of his back foot quite a bit in this game as well, and it was affecting his accuracy and velocity. So I'm not sure. Is it the totality of hits that have compounded over time? Because this stuff happens, and we're getting dangerously close to that place with Geno where you're going to start to get him seeing ghosts. You're going to start to see him bailing out of clean pockets just because he is being inundated with so much constant pressure. But hard to say on that one. Hard to say. Abel Gurman says Abel Lucas needs to return ASAP. That is true. Yes. Yes, we need Abe back big time. Richard says, I'll repeat this again because of spelling. If I was the owner of this beautiful club, I would be more ambitious and spend big. Definitely what you want, Richard. In the football, you want the team that's willing to spend. The good news on this, I'll say, is that if you look over the last 3 years, at pure money spent by NFL organizations, not contracts you have on the books that you'll end up cutting guys and get out from under that money, right? Which can be different than what actually ends up playing out. Your top 10 in the amount of money you've spent over the past 3 years in the NFL. And so they are kind of putting their money where their mouth is on that side of it. I don't know if they're always spending their money smartly, but they do spend it. Green Bean says Geno ain't the only problem, but he will be retired by the time the Hawks fix the problems. And the guy's best season is 9-8, so there shouldn't be people carrying his water. Well, I don't think that there's people carrying his water, and you might be right about the problems that are going to hold this team back aren't getting fixed anytime soon. Certainly is a fair point to be made as a possibility here. But Geno's played really good, Green Bean. And that's been the part that gets missing with this on this is that all of that he's up against and what's gone wrong and what not work right with this offense, yet he's performed really, really well. It's not to say necessarily the way to go future is that you have to roll with him in the future because of that. One doesn't have to mean out the other, but the prior is a truth to me. And that he's in many ways carried this team at times this season and over the past couple of years. Calm Cow, great points on the DK thing, Brandon. Thanks for your input. My pleasure, Calm Cow. Great questions, man. Awesome questions. Jermaine, we do still need linebackers as well. There's a lot to fix up. Jamora, don't think Lucas is even coming back. Last time he played was last year, week 7 against the Cards. Ever since then, he's been rehabbing or on IR. It's possible. And the team's not being very forward right now, Jamora, with the situation and whether it's close or still far away. They're hopeful. We hear that they're hopeful, but that's it. Nagasa says every stat shows that Geno is a very good quarterback with the worst offensive line. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The bloody microphone annoying me again is not listening. I told you, Richard, it's getting worse. Their updates are making it worse. Jaws, oof, that's a lot of dead cap. Yeah, they kind of we sort of re-engineered our way back into this situation with Draymond Jones, and I'm not trying to bum anybody out here, but here's 2025 for you. Here you go. So the money you're looking at here. So when it's red, that's money you save, right? And so money saved, not as much there. 16 base, you got $9 million bonus. Then the bonus comes off the base. Then you got a per game bonus equaling 500. So that comes off the base as well. You're not going to be left with a whole lot of extra savings here on the Draymond Jones deal after this year, unfortunately. Not the much. Probably a little bit more if you want to post June 1st in, but even then it's not good. Let's check this out. Boom. Voided year 2026, he's going to cost us $2.5 million. Boom. Voided year 2027 is going to cost us $2.7 million. Draymond Jones will be the gift that keeps on giving till almost 2030. Three hour, I'm not sure how the play calling has been. I haven't watched the last two games because they've kind of annoyed me, but in the first few weeks, Geno didn't have any hots, so when is he getting pressured? Yeah, and sometimes you're not giving him the hots because you're trying to get in max protect to make sure you give him the time. Tasha, I don't know where the commentary that Geno takes too long in the pocket comes from. Through the first few weeks, he was one of the fastest to process and get the ball out of the league. Correct, Tasha, yeah. I would say right now, if you took his time to throw, to your point, over the last 10 years, Geno Smith is getting the ball out of his hands faster than any quarterback that started for your Seahawks over the last 10 years. 100%. And 3 hour, you're right. You haven't had the checkdowns, and the checkdowns haven't been there because you're max protecting, because you don't trust your offensive line to hold up. But then this just all comes back then, and when that happens, you can't then come back to Geno and stuff. You're like, oh, we're having to do all this to kind of, we're moving one of the pass catchers out of the backfield for you so that you can pass protect. The pressure is still going to be on you almost instantly, but now you have one less pass catcher to try to throw the ball to, and the rest of the guys better create their separation on their routes, or you're just going to be stuck. Hand grenade B, we still available to go after Clowney, or is this guy the answer? I would be open to it. I'm not against, I'm kind of like non-committal on that one either way. They could do it. They certainly have the cap space to go still do it. I think that it probably looks less likely that that is a possibility at this point, in my opinion. Josh, yeah, he is that old. 34 years old now is Geno. John says, what scenario will Grubb be fired? And do you think they look to fix the offense, or will they ultimately trust Grubb? I think it's very hard that there's any scenario that you're going to fire Grubb this year. The offense has not been bad. It's not been consistent. We'd like it to be more explosive and put more points bottom line up on the board, but it's not been bad. I think it's going to be very hard to go to an offensive coordinator who has league worst pass protection that has nothing to do about his scheme. I mean, to my point, as we were just speaking about a second ago with Tasha, as Tasha was mentioning on this, you have a quarterback right now getting the ball out of his hands as fast as any quarterback in recent Seahawks history. I mean, almost by the nature of that alone, Grubb is trying to do what he can do to overcome poor pass protection, but you are giving him poor pass protection nonetheless. And he has a unit that's not run blocking. It's not a lack of a creative running game that's holding this team back. It's the fact that your offensive linemen cannot drive defensive linemen off the ball. And worse than that, they're getting pushed into the backfield very consistently. So I think you'd have a hard time going to any OC at this point, giving him those, here's the parameters that you get to work with, and not saying that you kind of somewhat set him up, if not to fail, certainly not to succeed. I don't know if Gino's been off for 3 games, as I'm seeing in the chat. Gino had 1 bad game this year. The rest of the games, he's had to carry a lot of this offense by and large on his back. And I'm seeing that a comment, Gino's mid. I mean, Gino's on pace for throwing for 5,000 yards this year. A quarterback in the NFL has not thrown for 5,000 yards in 2 years. There's very rare quarterbacks in this sport that have thrown for 5,000 yards, period. I don't think that you're a mid quarterback and make it to 5,000 yards passing. I think that's... You're a little better than that if you're putting up that kind of production. You're going to call a quarterback mid to me. I look at a mid quarterback and go, he'll top out about 3,700 yards as far as passing in a season. You got to get up to 5,000 yards passing. Additional, on pace for an additional 300 yards scrambling. So he'll put 5,300 yards of offense up, but he'll be mid this year. I don't know on that one. I don't know if I can quite get there. John says, all I know is we need Abraham more than the slaves need him. John with an underrated Bible joke. Hans, what is the factor fourth quarter wins comeback? Just curious. He is first in bold. He is, yeah. I think you're asking someone else on the chat on that one. Tasha says, speaking of OCs, Shane Waldron has Caleb looking good for the last 3 games. They played bad teams, but Caleb looked good. He did, yeah. And he has. He has. John Doe says, Gino keeps us 9-8. Let him go and do a true rebuild. It will be a complicated discussion to be had on Gino. It's not straight. And I'm loving up on Gino. I'm backing him. I'm giving you guys some of this data. Say this is where I hold him into, but I do think it's completely fair to say yes. But the question does not become as easy when we're talking about paying him $45 to $50 million a year for a 34-year-old quarterback. There's got to be more built into the discussion beyond just Gino and the abilities and where he's at as a player. You also got to be looking at your team, where the onboarding process is, how close you are to being a contender, where's the offensive line at, what is the true cost going to be? I think it's a very, very complicated question. And the good news on this one is we don't have to even really face it right now. We got to wait till the end of the offseason. Wait till the start of the offseason to really kind of figure out what we want to do with that. Hans says, well, controversial Mahomes is carried to the Super Bowl last year, while Gino has no D or O-line. Still, he is not the one I give him the goods. And let's see. Fair? Tasha says, do you think it was Pete holding Waldron back and not letting him open up the playbook? Well, one of the best throws and passes you're going to see from Caleb Williams over the past 3 weeks, Tasha, is throws up the seam. I think I saw about 4 or 5 of those throws from Caleb Williams, and I think, in fact, you could say he's one of the better throwers of seam balls in the sport from the quarterback position already. What did we know about the prior offense, Tasha? You were 32nd in the NFL at targeting the middle of the field. So what are seam throws? Middle of the field throws. So do I think Waldron was held back, at least in that way, by Pete? Yeah, I don't think Pete was necessarily pulling fully the reins back, and it will remain to be seen if Waldron is this not just a 3-game sample size, but this is something that can continue through the season, because, of course, the prior games to these 3 games, it was not looking as good. The offense was not looking as well put together. But maybe some of that is Caleb developing and feeling more comfortable. Maybe Waldron is able to go a little bit more wild and crazy. I think the thing that helps him too here, Tasha, we're talking about this offensive line and how it's holding back Grubb. The thing could be absolutely applied to Waldron last year as well. I think Waldron didn't help himself by the lack of targeting in the middle of the football field, by the lack of his use of motion in his offense. But again, if I'm an OC that's being asked and handed the job, and you're coming in here, okay? I'm coming in here. I'm going to get to be your OC. You're going to get to be our OC. Yes, I want to be your OC. I've been living for this job. This is my dream, man. Yeah. Just a couple things first before you come in. Okay. What's up? What do you got? We're going to give you league worst pass protection. Okay. And we're also going to give you piss poor run blocking. Huh? Good luck. It's hard. It's hard to hand them those parameters and say, make it work with that. And maybe there are brilliant OCs that can do that, but you'd much rather be at least giving your OCs functioning level of play in your positional groups to allow them to run the full allotment of their playbook. Richards is, like I said before, Mike just needs another season. This is betting in season, not a playoff season. Agreed. Agreed. Gavin King says, with Pete Carroll, the first two seasons for the Hawks were 7-9. That's right. Patience, patience, patience. Mr. Kane, my brother from another mother, how you doing? Says, being at the game, I must say, it feels like the buzz for this team is back. I don't know how it felt on the telly, but it is there, and we need to feed that fire again. No stress year for me. Go Hawks. It's a place that I'm going to be in as well. I'll have my moments where I'm sure be disappointed and get my feelings at times, but the overall takeaways from this season is to sit back, be patient, let this thing unfurl, let it play out, and see where we're at by the end of the year. Let's take stock at that point, but a lot less of the stress angle of it too. I think that's where we come back to expectations. If we can check the expectations, less of a chance of getting somehow destroyed in our outlook of what we hope to happen, and more being in that reasonable mode. And if they surprise us, they surprise us. Lou says, put Geno behind the Lions offensive line. We may be talking about Geno for MVP. 100% agreed. 100% agreed. Josh says, anyone can look solid behind the Lions offensive line. They're solid. I could throw behind them. Probably. Richard says, I understand the like for Geno Smith. He needs to be much quicker. If he starts scrambling, that's good. Not stand in the pocket too long. 5 seconds, that's all he's got. Definitely don't have the time to hold on to the ball there, Richard. There are the time to throw stats like Tasha was referencing. I think even like 3 weeks ago, Richard, he was, I think, number 2 or number 3 in the league at getting the ball out of his hands as fast as anybody in the sport. So he's in the overall standpoint, while there are maybe some moments in there that he's holding on, in the overall standpoint of things, he's getting that ball out fast, and it's really an indictment back to the offensive line. Because if I have a quarterback that's top 3 in the sport of getting his ball out of his hands as fast as possible, that's the benefits of the line looking better from a statistical standpoint in their pass protection, right? Because your pass protection is based around pressures and quarterback hits and how much you're giving up on that. And if the quarterback's getting the ball out of his hands before the defensive lineman can functionally create any kind of pass rush, then I get the win on that play from an offensive line's perspective, even if I didn't really get the win. But if you have a quarterback holding onto the ball long, I got to pass protect longer, much more of a chance for me to have worse graded stats when it comes to our pass protection. So it's a little bit where the numbers don't make a lot of sense on that, Richard, where you do kind of come back as far as my accumulation of that, of top 3 quarterback getting the ball out of his hands, yet you have a league worst crew on the offensive line. My equals on that is, my with all that bears out to me on that is that your offensive line sucks. Like, even when you're giving them advantages, they're still sucking. They're still finding a way to give up instant pressure. Instant pressure. And that's where I think that's the thing more than Geno on this with me, Richard, is that's the part we got to concentrate on. Because you clean up that part, the offense will play better. The offense will soar at that point. I'd be with you on it if not for that stat there, Richard. It's just that stat with him getting that ball out of his hands as quick as he does. It stands out. And it's been something in other years, Richard, we haven't been able to lean on, where we go, okay, you're about 2.8 seconds. I think they were at 2.65 or something like that a couple of weeks ago. I haven't checked on the stat recently there, Richard, but overall, you're doing a pretty good job with that side, at least a little bit. Green Bean, Schneider signed Adams for a few first rounders and a max contract, and Draymond to that contract. That guy's a D, if not F, as a general manager. Well, the spotlight's more on him now, and he's got more to prove here. And he's getting a bit of a pass here with this Carroll year moving on, but he's a guy that is going to be getting a lot more of the criticism on this side if these kind of moves continue to flame out in this way. Richard wants to spend big on Brock. I don't think the Niners are letting him go, Richard. I don't think they're letting him go. Please do hit that like button if you guys get a chance. Thank you for reminding me of that, Mr. Kane. Kevin King, would Clowney want to come to the Seahawks? I never usually have insider information, but I've actually had an opportunity time back in the day to play a little bit with Clowney on some video games back in the day when he was here at the Seahawks, and he liked it here. Yeah, he did. He's a little bit more of a Southern guy, of course. You know, he's from the South, and I'm sure that at this point in time, he'd like to play down probably into the South, but I'm sure that he'd also rather be playing for a winner as his career is starting to wind down, or at least the potential of playing for a winner rather than a Panther team that's not going to go anywhere this year. So I would educated guess would be yes, he would be willing to, and he does fit to this defense. The thing with it too on that, Gavin, is he had a career year with McDonald. He had his best year of his career in the McDonald defense last year. 3 hour, I think a right tackle in the first, left guard in the second, and maybe a center in the third if you don't resign Williams. And if John doesn't value the offensive line for yet another year, I think questions need to be asked. I think so as well. This cannot go through another offseason of this. And if it happens, you can bet if we walk through another offseason of treating the offensive line like we have for the past 10 years, I'm not going to be a happy camper. And while I'm a very patient man right now, I will be very impatient if I see that, because we can see that car wreck again then coming. Colin Cal, the Hawks Nest. Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. I don't think people should neglect a 6th-round pick as much as people are. I myself am still like, no big deal, but a 6th-round pick could be a changing pick. It's part of the reason I'm not a big fan of the Roy deal. Being that this is also, Calm Cal, the second time that you've done this in the past month. People getting gold, just a 6th. Yeah, it's also the second 6th that you flipped in the past month that you've just thrown away to the wind. And the Travis Gibson one has been just thrown away to the wind. You're getting almost no return back for that pick you gave up. And that very well could be what we end up kind of finding out in this same situation here with Roy. And there's other reasons beyond it. I'm not a fan of it. The cost of him at $6 million next year on the cap and $6 million a year after that, not a fan of that. I don't think he gives you quite enough as a player for a depth guy to be spending that kind of money in on top of the draft capital. And it's more to me of a move for them now in the moment than anything else. I don't think that this was a move about a long term. It was more about, we got to get this thing fixed here right now. So it makes it a reactionary move. But yeah, I'm not a fan of people just saying 6th-round picks don't matter. 5th-round picks, just throw those picks away. It's a bit of a defeatist attitude. It's also something that's led us to make mistakes in other places when we've applied that mindset in other times in the draft. I was mentioning at the top, Calm, about the fact that for years when you were getting into the playoffs on a yearly basis and you're picking 25, 26, 27, 24, 28, when you're picking in that mode, you're into tier 2 of the draft. You're not getting the blue chip players in the first round, yet fans expect you to get a really good player when you pick one in the first round. So the Seahawks were just picking bad for many years to that first round. They weren't getting good players. Malik McDowell, LJ Collier, Jermaine Ifedi. So they eventually said, well, we just don't pick well here, so we'll just trade these picks for Jamal Adams. And that was a defeatist attitude. And what that did, what you need to do better was pick better in the first round. Or, God forbid, trade up in a draft and get into the blue chip range if that's what you need to do. Which they have never done. So I'm with you. I don't like just tossing picks away like that. I'm not we drafted DJ James this year and he's not on the team anymore. So what does the 6th-round pick really matter? But like you say, there are other 6th-round picks that have brought value. There's other 6th-round picks that have turned into good players. So you can't just apply that this one guy that was a 1 pick in 1 year means that no other picks can be good from that 6th-round range of things. So I'm just not a fan of it in the overall stance. I'm hopeful for it. I'd like the guy to work out, but I can't just sign off on that one blindly because there's some parameters to this deal that aren't the best. Young Gun says W for pumpkin. Thank you, Young Guns. She appreciates that. Jordan says it's literally impossible to be mid and get 5,000 yards. Agreed. Yeah. And it should be the end of the story. And yes, if you go look right now, folks, go to ESPN, go look at Geno Smith, go look at his stats, go look at what is projected for a 17-game season. Over 5,000 yards. Almost 5,500 collective yards when you factor in what he's done running the ball behind a league worst offensive line and a run blocking unit that can't open up any holes for their backs. That's hard for me to get to mid on that. That's really hard for me to get to mid on that. Agree. Green Bay says Geno has three good to great wide receivers and no running back production, so his stats are inflated. Well, I mean, you've got some in the running game you produced, so the backs have got not nothing. And while, yeah, he's got three good receivers, Green Bean, haven't drops been a problem across the board through these first 6 weeks? Doesn't DK Metcalf have multiple fumbles? The receiver argument's a fair one in that he has quality receivers to throw to, but it's not enough to override the other stuff that's gone wrong. And not having running back production means now you're one-dimensional, Green Bean, which means now defenses don't have to respect the run, which means that they can just sit back on the pass that much more, meaning that it becomes that much harder to throw when the defense knows you're going to do it every single snap, which means that Geno's degree of difficulty increases with that. Doesn't get easier because of that. It gets harder because of that. But again, even you, Green Bay, can't call a mid guy 5,000 yards. When there's 5 guys in NFL history or something like that that's hit 5,000 yards, we can't be calling a guy mid at that point or trying to dress it up other than what it is he's playing the position really well. Really well. Had a bad game this past week. And I know folks that are out on Geno don't like to hear it, but he's playing really well. It's getting harder for you guys folks to make these arguments on him somehow being trash or garbage or not a good to great quarterback in this league when he's playing like this. I'm not saying 5,000, the yardage should be in itself be an indicator, but when you take the whole story into account, it's kind of sort of speaks a tale that's pretty concise. Dami Doodoo, I love Geno. I hope he's our quarterback until he decides otherwise, but it seems like a chunk of his yardage comes from garbage time. Yeah, I don't know on that one, guys. Again, I'm gonna be a bit off on this one. So, first 3 games of the year, was that garbage time when he's getting the yardage on that? I don't think so. In all of these games, you've been basically into it in the game until late in the fourth quarter. So you're not getting lapped by these teams like at Stat Padford. And the teams are like up by 3 touchdowns. You're 3-3, so it's not like you're a 1-6, 1-7 team. Again, you're going to do like the Stat Padford thing. You'd go, okay, well, you're a 1-7 team that's doing nothing but being down by 3 touchdowns from the second quarter onward. So you're just throwing. It's not really that. I don't know that I can't go there on that myself. Hans says it's impossible. Haters are going to hate. Put Lamar, Allen, or Burrow in this offense, and they're injured or throwing picks all over the place with this O-line and run game. But yeah, Geno stinks. Exactly. Richard says, anyway, let's look forward to the next games. Let's stop criticizing player. We're making ourselves look ridiculous. Yeah, man. I'm with it. 3-hour Geno hasn't had a decent O-line since he's gotten a chance to start. He's also had bottom 10 defense and horde play calling. Putting a loss to a good team completely on Geno's crazy. Agreed. Green Bay says Geno had a great offensive line on the Jets. That didn't improve his stats. He was bottom 5 of the league. He had a great offensive line on the Jets. He had a couple of guys that were good, but that was not a great offensive line, Green Bay. And again, when you're pulling back to a rookie and second year of a guy who's in his very early 20s, and then you're going to take that and extrapolate that data to mean that if he was given, so you're saying then, Green Bean, that even if we gave him a good offensive line right now, you'd see no improvement then. Based on what you're saying then with that, is that then you would see no improvement from Geno? You gave him a top crust offensive line then? Because he's shown you back with the Jets when he first entered the league. And even then, that wasn't a very good offensive line. I mean, you've got Mangold and you've got an old-ass DeBrickashaw Ferguson at that point who's on his last legs. What else did he have exactly on that offensive line that was so top-notch? So, no, I don't think that he had, even I think in that year, a top 10 offensive line performative-wise, Green Bean. But again, even if he did, that's his first and second year of his career. The whole point of the Geno assessment's been that players can develop, players can improve. They can continue to ascend with time in the sport as they more master their sport or master their craft. That's an interesting argument, though. Me says, give Geno an average offensive line, and we're not even having this conversation. I think you might be right on that. Greg says, hey, B, what are your thoughts on the Jets? Dysfunction, bad ownership. As all football teams that are bad for years on end and decades on end, it typically can be pointed back to ownership as a base reasoning. Lack of commitment, or sometimes too much commitment, too much control, too much spinning through when they're not seeing what they want to see as a result. And with the Jets, you have bad ownership. And then from bad ownerships, all the other decisions then are sort of muddied by that flow down from it. And you want as a football team to have a plan in place and have a philosophy and a vision. You don't want to be constantly reactive to what's happening in the moment, because you're just going to end up chasing your tail. And you're not going to end up solving what you're seeking to solve. And so the Davante Adams deal, look, I mean, in for a penny, in for a pound at this point. You made your deal with the devil Aaron Rodgers, and now you got to carry that deal out to the full. So going and getting Davante Adams, while it's a completely desperate deal and it's not likely to fix anything, from their standpoint, why not do it? It's not like this thing isn't going to have to be blown up and put all back together individually, part by part, after this year from a New York Jet perspective anyway. So you're already in it. You might as well get to swimming. But the Jets are not going to do anything this year, in my opinion. And it should certainly be a lesson for teams in the NFL in how not to operate moving into the future with these kind of moves that they've made. Alan says, well, what we got, Geno for $25 million, and he has another year on the deal, while Burrow and Lamar are costing $50 million a year, or even better to have Geno. Yeah, I do think, though, that Hansi's going to want a new deal after this year. I don't think he'll stay at that mark, but your point's true. Holy Scan Grenade, OB, by the way, did you get around to watch Deadpool and Wolverine yet, considering we had the mini buy? I did. I liked it. Great flick. I enjoyed it quite a bit, man. It was good. Very, very good. Hope they make more of those kind of movies, man. More of those kind of R-rated. Let it fly, Jamar, a 6th round pick in 2026, like a 7th round pick, laughing out loud. Yeah, maybe. It's still sort of just tossing picks to the wind for a team that's not really seemingly ready to compete in the moment. Gavin, the Hawks did try to come back, got to within 5, then fell apart. Just a horrible game to watch. Yeah. Mr. Kane. Sorry, man. I'm just about Mr. Dono there. I said, thank you for the $5 donation, Mr. Kane. Appreciate you, brother. Says, had to calm my Seahawks family down about Geno at the game. Not his best game for sure. Sorry, I've been away writing. We'll try and be more present. GH. And I'm trying to do the same thing with Colin, folks. And look, we didn't want to have him have that kind of game, primetime TV against the Niner team that you're looking to finally beat. So it just makes it feel like the stakes are even bigger at that point with what you're watching and looking at. And I get that from people's perspective, but Geno's been a really good player for this team for years now. Through this season, he's been fantastic. And I think we got to still lean in that pocket of knowing that that's who he is as a player at this point, at least for the rest of the season. And we'll figure out, there's so much jumping right now to trying to make a decision about Geno that's a decision that's at the end of the year. I see the same thing with DK, and I know that these are topics that are going to dominate the discussion, but I would just offer again to you folks is we're rushing to try to get to an end game spot on those two players. DK's got to go. He's got to stay. Geno's got to be paid. We're got to move Geno. We don't have to make these determinations right now. Certainly worthy of discussion, and we want to turn over the parts and pieces of it, I get, but we've got a whole season to let this thing fully play out to see where it sits. And I think we've got to take the big picture view of this at the end of the year for all of these individual players and what we want to determine to do with them. And that if we're making any of these determinations now, we're doing so still while we're in the early part of the year. The story is not yet told. We got still more time for the 2024 Seahawks and their tale to be told in full. So let's let that happen, and then we'll make that what the determination needs to be going forward at the end of the year. But I'm doing much of the same, Mr. Kane. I'm doing much of the same with Gino on that one. There will be an NFC West roundtable tonight at 6 o'clock. I'll be over there on that side of it. Thanks for the dono, man. It's good to hear, too, that the stadium's cooking, Mr. Kane. That's one part I'm wanting to hope to hear from some of the fans coming to the stadium this year, is if they are feeling a little bit more of a vibrant energy from the fandom, if it is getting a little bit maybe back to some typical loudness to it. Kane says, Gino for MVP, please. If not Brock Purdy, I put my money on him as well. Let's go. Yeah, I think Allen might be the front runner right now. Hard to say. Lou says Gino has to play duck and chuck right now. Yes, he does. A lot of the throws you can see to him this year where he's making a throw and he's getting drilled right after the pass. Adi says we haven't put the Gino derangement syndrome to bed yet. Not yet, Adi. I've been fighting this fight for 2 long years. And battle after battle. Dean says, I believe a lot of Gino haters just don't know football. It's been something I've been trying to pick at the edges at to understand better. I do try to understand, and I can get the cost aspect. I don't want to pay a quarterback this amount of money after this year. I can see some of that, but how he's playing the position and the degree of difficulty he's up against is something that I don't think can be understated. Greenby says, Gino's mid until he beats good quarterbacks. Wake me up when he beats Mahomes and not the Dolphins' backup QB. Well, I mean, that's where it gets hard to have that metric of it, Greenby, because I know that people want to put wins and losses on quarterbacks, but why do we do that? There's 53 other men on the roster, and especially when we're talking about the specificity with Gino that we're talking about. League worst pass protection unit, offensive line that can't run block, a defense that's been putrid for 2 seasons and absolutely living on the football field, schemes that have been rudimentary at best. You bring those things into it, and are those things more heavily weighted to why you lost those games against quality opponents, Green Bean? Or was it actually Gino failing in those moments, and all of those things were holding up their end of the bargain, and it was Gino in those big moments, it was Gino in those big games who was the big contributing factor as to why you lost? I don't think that you would make that case. So when we come to putting wins and losses on quarterbacks, I think it's already a little unfair to do that. But if you're going to do that, you better be bringing in all this other stuff that you're taking into account of what's been at play on the Seahawks team in full in consideration of that. And if not, you're only looking at part of the tale. You're cutting off all of this other information to then just lock in on this one little viewpoint to make your determination about the player and whether or not he's good or bad or what he's doing. And I don't think that that's the right way to make assessments on a football team. I think that can lead you in the wrong direction because you want to take in all of the data, especially when the data is telling you a very specific story like this one is with Gino. Gavin says the Jets are famous for destroying new quarterbacks. Yes, they are. It's been quite a run for them, hasn't it? You know, from your Genos to your Sam Darnolds to your Zach Wilsons. They're doing their best to get Aaron beat up. They got Aaron so beat up now that you can catch him on the sidelines with blood going down his arm, down his hand with an L. It's that bad. Green Bean Jets had a great O-line and no wide receivers. Bad stats. Hawks have good O-line. Yeah, Jets, I looked this up, Green Bean, before when I was doing some research on Gino back with the Jets. The Jets did not have a great offensive line. So they had, Mangold was a Pro Bowler, and Drabickaw Ferguson was kind of on his last legs, but the rest of the guys were not good on that line. Was it a dominant line? Was it an average? Maybe you can make the average. But again, Green Bean, you're grabbing a guy that's in his rookie or second year. Do you really honestly believe that that guy has no growth and development to his game 10 years later? That he's the same player he was walking in? And again, on this whole thing of you say that there's some equivalency to, well, okay, Jets had bad receivers, but a good offensive line. So we have good receivers, but no offensive line. So that's the equivalency. You're drawing these very general, rudimentary, just simplified comparisons rather than trying to get into the depths. And that's what I sometimes find with this stuff, Green Bee, when we have these conversations, is there's a pull to simplify rather than try to take into account all of the data. And I don't know why there's a draw to do that. Why only look at partially this much of the story when there's all of this out here to take a look at that can tell you really what the truth is of the situation, in my opinion. So I just don't, I kind of don't understand that part of it. I really don't. And again, bad offensive line is not equivalent to not having good wide receivers. If I look through this year right now and you look at offensive lines that are where we're sitting at or worse in this sport right now, you either have horrific offenses or you have a quarterback that's been injured, as is the case of the Saints, for instance, even if they're playing pretty decently. So it's no small thing to state that. But maybe we're not going to maybe find common ground on this one. Gino doesn't play defense. Green Bay. Oh, sorry, speaking of Green Bay. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Missed a couple donos here as well. Y2K, thank you for the $5 donation. Appreciate you for that, Y2K. And thank you as well for being a membership to the channel. You too, Mr. Kane. Says you can get kickers, punters, running backs, special teams, aces, solid depth, and random solid players in the 6th round. Amen. Amen, Y2K. You can find good running backs at times in the 6th round, like you say too. Yeah, that's absolutely a money spot for pretty solid running backs at times. So it's a fair point. I don't like throwing picks to the wind. I just don't. I don't like it's only this, just toss it away. Because again, we applied this at one point in time to 1st round picks, and it got us in trouble. It led to bad decision making down the line because you made this determination at the front. Oh, we don't pick well here. Oh, you can't find good players there. You take the defeatist attitude and you start making defeatist decisions. And that's not the smart approach for a franchise. Mr. Kane says, Gino for MVP, please. If not Brock Purdy, I put my money on him. Let's go. Richard Stewartson, thank you for another $2 donation. Richard, appreciate all of your support to the channel. Richard says, this is my favorite program. That's why I donate to keep it up, bro. I'll thank you, Richard. I really appreciate it, man. I really, really do. You allow me to do this. You guys, with all of your support, I get to do this on a daily basis. I got another couple of shows tonight here with the round table, and I get to do this because you guys do put your support in here. And I don't have to go get that full-time job on the side. It allows me to really be able to just open the wings and let this thing soar. Dizzy, I think JS' idea of offensive line is draft and develop. Then when they're developed and the rookie deal's up, let them go so we can start over again. We have cap issues, not money problems. I'm sure the Seahawks can make a lot of money. They do. Yes, that is correct. That is correct. Richard says, my favorite cat is on the show Pumpkin. She's our mascot. Go for it, Pumpkin. She's a good girl. She is our mascot here. She's a good one. Ricardo Hawksness, I had a thought. With all the teams spending high picks on quarterbacks and casting them off after a couple of years, I think the new meta is to pick up a cast off from other teams. I like it. I like it, Richard. And that's part of the places I've always been with this quarterback of the future talk, is to say, I know people love the new and shiny toy and nobody wants to take on secondhand parts from another team. But because of the way the teams treat the quarterback position and the disposable nature that they approach the position with, I've related it. It's my favorite comparison to this, but I think that this is what you see from NFL teams, is they are the parent that are taking their child to the pool for the first time. They go down to the 12-foot end of the pool rather than start at the shallow end and let the child get their feet on the shallow end and come down the steps and figure out the depths and get comfortable and start to learn to swim. They go to the 12-foot end of the pool and they go, plop, and they toss that child into that deep end. And they just look at him and they're like, hey, you're supposed to naturally know how to float and swim. Like when you're in the belly pregnant, right? Go ahead. Come on now. And then they go, and they drop to the bottom of the water, and then they turn around, they look at their wife, and they say, let's go make another one, baby. That one didn't know how to swim. And I think that there's something to be said of, hey, if you can go grab that baby from the bottom of that pool, give him some resuscitation. Maybe it was their broken program. Maybe it was their broken process. And maybe it was their bad philosophy that led to that kid, not just simply that he was a bad QB or couldn't make it happen. And I think you're right. We're learning more and more with some of these quarterbacks that are finding a second footing in different spots, that there's a lot of teams that take that approach, and market opportunity, like you talk about, market opportunity. Richard says, I still think the Seahawks need investments from rich Arabs will help the club expand if we got money problems. That's what clubs do. There's no real money problems there, Richard. There was a thing that got released out where last 3 years, you're top 10 in actual money spent in the NFL. So you're spending your money. You're spending your money. They're not holding the purse strings back. They're spending as much as any team in the NFL right now. They've done that over a 3-year stretch, by the way, where they've not really been in necessarily contending status, where they haven't been necessarily pushing for Super Bowls, right? Where you could validate to your owner, where you go, hey, keep us in this top 10 rate because we're in our Super Bowl window. You know, like the Niners are probably having to do with their situation there and with their owner. So it does show that they've got the money, they're spending. They're spending. Jordan says, I think it's time to ignore the Geno comment. I'm at the spot. It's a lot like the DK one where if it's something that's going to dominate the chat, we can raise it up and talk about it a bit. But I agree with you. I think we've beaten both of these two subjects into the place where, people are in the camps that they're in. And I don't know if there's going to be much draw pulling people one way or the other. Me, Schneider likes fast cars, but he won't invest in tires. Going to the discount tire store. And he's like, give me those ones from China that are only about 5% rubber. Sure, sir, are you sure? I mean, it's mostly wood, so. Yeah, but it's 5% rubber, right? I mean, that'll be enough. That'll get us through. Krill says, all those turnovers across the league and we couldn't get one. Ricardo, the Hawks Nest, I had a thought. With all the teams spending high picks on quarterbacks and casting them. Oh, sorry, I just read that. My bad. Hans is curious why NFL stadiums are smaller than the college ones. I think ticket prices in college they are cheaper. And when you have the NFL stadiums and you're going to start charging people $200, $300, $400 per ticket, you better not be giving them a seat in the house where they can't see the action. And probably a little bit of what you would have to do if you were going to expand the stadium, to that much. Richard says, I do apologize because I always think of big things about the Seahawks because I always love the club. I'm a ambitious guy only for the Hawks. No, Richard, I love your perspective, man. And here at the Hawks Nest, whether we agree or disagree, all perspectives are welcome. We don't have to be in lockstep. I don't want this to be an echo chamber. You'll get pushback, There'll be people in the chat who'll push back against you, but they'll do it respectfully. And I think all perspectives are welcome here. It helps us better understand what is the right approach. Space says Aaron Diva won't make it a full season. That pass protection still doesn't look all that great, does it, Space? To your point. Green Bee says Mark Sanchez took the same team, Jets team, to the AFC Championship game and 2 wins, also a rookie. Yeah, it was a way better roster from start to finish, Green Bee. I mean, by the end there, once Sanchez moved on, your roster started to go into a deplorable shape. If you really want, we can go through and I can show you, if you really want to press down this, we can look at the 2 rosters on it. But there was a difference on the Sanchez roster to the roster that Geno Smith got. And especially when it came to the offensive line play, that was not in the same place. He did not have the same kind of running backs that Sanchez had to work with. I think Sanchez got like LaDainian Tomlinson there at the end, who still was able to be a 1,000-yard back and effective. Didn't have much of anything there for a running back perspective of things. You're the first person, Green Bee, that I've had a lot of conversations with Jets fans and Geno. A lot of conversations with Jets fans about Geno and Geno's first spot. This is the first time I've ever heard a person that's tried to push up that Geno Smith had a great supporting cast for the Jets, or that he had a great offensive line with the Jets. I've never heard anybody purport to that being the truth of the matter here. So you're bringing something up that may be the truth, but this is the first time I'm hearing it after a great deal of many conversations about this given subject with the fans of those Jets that were watching Geno play week in, week out at that time. Because I get a lot of people in my chat in that way. But like I say, on this, we may be at that spot where it's just sort of agree to disagree spot of it. Yeah, the generalized comparison thing too. It's Richard. Mythic says, do you think Woolen can ever be a superstar? Look, he's really well rated this year. I think he's a top 4 rated corner by PFF. He's given up very few yards. I think as a cover man, he can be a superstar. I don't think he'll ever be, if a superstar has got to be a great tackler and a great cover man, then no. If he can be just a great cover man that's just an all right tackler, then yeah, he's got ball skills and he can cover anybody in this sport. So, if that can be the measurement, but it sort of depends on what you want to consider a superstar at that point. But he's having a great year this year to begin things. Starting out here as Woolen. He's come a little bit forward, I think, in his run defense and tackling. I don't think it's come a mile forward, but it's a little improved from where it was last year. And as a coverage man, he's been great. Hans is very tough to get tickets sold within seconds and millions of people waiting to get a ticket. True. Ethan, I'm late. Quick synopsis on how you think the Falcons game will go. Ooh, I think you're going to see a game where it's going to be very run heavy. You have two of the worst defenses in the NFL at stopping the run, and that's going to put. Meanwhile, you have two offenses that both have two quality backs to hammer that opposition's weakness. So this might be a game that's like an hour and 37 minutes as far as how long the whole game ends up lasting, because there's so much running of the football. But it is going to be a little bit like last week probably here, Ethan, where, more than who passes, which is saying something because you have Cousins and Geno on both sides. And I do expect the passing game to be cogent and productive for both teams on that side. But it's going to maybe be down more to who stops the run better as to who will win this football game. So that's where you really got to lead with on this one, is getting some holes opened up, being able to attack them in those holes, controlling the clock and protecting your defense a little bit better, maintaining better balance, Ethan, so that you're not putting this league worst like pass protection unit back on bright display once again for another week. So running the ball is not to be a repeater from last week, but that does sit as a sort of a centerpiece in this game, and how you defend the run sits as a centerpiece in this game. Because that Falcons team's got a couple running backs that are tough. They're like the Falcons, where then Bijan can hit you with the big plays, and Algiers can just be that David Montgomery-like hammer. They've got the quality offensive line that can get it done there too, to open up those holes against this defensive line that struggled in that manner. So I'm very worried on that part. And that's where really, Ethan, the key for me will come down to. Whoever ends up with the most rushing yardage will win this game. I felt that way about last week as well with the Niners, and I feel that way about this week as well. It won't be all games are that way, but with how hard we've had a time of stopping the run, with how hard time we've had in the last few weeks of keeping control of the clock, with how one-dimensional our offense has been, this is one of those games where it does get a little bit more simplified down to that. And you've got to eliminate the turnovers that you can control. A guy comes out and punches a ball out, you got two hands on it, you're doing what you can. As a quarterback, you're under duress, you need to throw the ball away, but instead you're trying to force a ball in on a spot. Don't do that. You've got to play cleaner offensively and special teams wise. We've got to do more to protect the defense on those two angles. Control the clock, get better balance, and stop with the stupid turnovers putting your defenses on a short field. They're not good enough right now to be putting them in that predicament over and over again. Richard says there's more Seahawks fans in Europe than anyone else in the NFL. That's true facts. I've heard the same, Richard. And I got to say, it feels that way. Doing this channel and interactions I have with our international 12s, I get that feeling, man. I get that feeling. Dizzy says Woolen would be an absolute superstar if he's on an East Coast team. He'd have the attention like Sauce gets if he was. Probably. Yeah, it definitely hinders that a little bit being on the West Coast. T-Money, Israel. I feel the defense was built around the 15th pick, and with Murphy out, the defense can't function because our depth does not fill in the blanks. That's why the run game is not being stopped. Certainly not stopping the run necessarily as well with Murphy out, T-Money, so you might be onto something there. I will say that the Patriots in the game, Murphy was out there with both Ramondre Stevenson and Gibson in that game, were able to find some holes. And that was with a healthy Murphy out there rolling in that game. But he will help. He is a good run defender. Can't hurt things in the least to have him back into the flux, and certainly also helps T-Money on the rotations and getting some of the snap counts down a little bit more. Getting guys like Hankins and Reed a little bit more fresher from it too. Which is if we expand the triangle stand, I'm sure we get to 80,000. I'd be with it, man. If they wanted to do it, I'd be with it, Richard. More fans, the louder it's going to get. Kevin says, as soon as Woolen was out, his side was constantly targeted. Needless to say, he's impactful. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Mythic, I've heard arguments that he never will be due to his liabilities in tackling and especially run support, but Sauce is considered a superstar and his tackling and run D is even worse than Woolen's, according to PFF. Yeah, and some of that is a little bit to me on that Mythic of I've thought Sauce is the most overrated cornerback in the league for a while now. I think he's been completely blown out of proportion. And to the point on, is it the East Coast thing? Yeah, the East Coast thing is a big part of that. I think Woolen can come forward on his tackling. It's just a question for me, Mythic, is it wasn't good last year, and there are still some times and moments on this where it does hold the team back a little bit. But does it not make him an impactful player? Does it not make him a potential all-pro? Yeah. I mean, it still doesn't lower him down as an all-around player, and it still wouldn't prevent me, Mythic, as well, from signing him to a contract extension if he's going to be this good as a cover man. At the end of the day, you're paying corners for what they do in coverage. You want the tackling, you want the run defense, but you're paying them for what they do in coverage, especially if they're able to take the ball away, which is something that he has shown an ability to do. So I'm not down on him in that way. And some of this has got to be given some room for improvement, being that he is pretty new to the cornerback position, right? Isn't this just like his, I want to say, fifth season now as a cornerback? It was only the final 2 years of college that he flipped over from wide receiver to corner. So, give him some time to improve on that side of it. It's not a finished product. Greg says the NFL treats Woolen like a superstar with how they avoid throwing his way. Meaning not calling Woolen a superstar cornerback is irrelevant. It's about how other NFL teams see and treat him that matters. Very real. Very true. Money. Our offense has no true identity with the new coaching and playbook. So with trying to figure out the talents that work with the playbook is not truly functional and can't be successful. They're certainly still looking through on that, Israel. Yep. It's still a trying to figure out kind of game there. Which is, I'm sure we'll get superstars in the Seahawks maybe next year. Maybe. Well, I think you're just hoping for some development from within there, Richard, on that. Mythic Woolen is also good at eliminating yak. He's right there to tackle the receiver after the catch. His run defense is still a problem, unfortunately, but less than last year. I think that's an accurate way of putting it. Very accurate. Hans watched Sauce on the London game holding and PI merchant. His name was Terrion Arnold. Arnold's another one like that. Yeah. Same kind of mold. They're going to go out and they're going to basically hold you and rip. Like what they have is they have this move they do where they first hold you at the line of scrimmage. They're not even chucking you. They're just grabbing right on you at the line. They then carry you through the first 5 yards where it's somewhat legal to do that. Then there's a release. There's 3 steps. Then there's another re-grab for just a quick grab, right? Then the grab goes back off. You run another couple steps. Then the grab comes back on. And those guys do it play after play after play after play. And it's awful. It really is awful. That's why I call Sauce Gardner the Handsy Ramsey. That's my nickname for him. Mythic says Sauce finally getting holding calls. About time. No more free 90-plus PFF grades and undeserved first-team All-Pros. Amen. Good to see that they're finally calling him on it. Now can we start calling Tre'Davious Ward on it as well once he gets back for the Niners? Because those two guys are the two most blatant in the NFL by a mile. And Terrion Arnold's working his way up that list. He's working his way up that list big time. Richard says, let's go for UK Seahawks. We're a big shout out. Hey, shout out to the UK Seahawks. I know you guys are out there in full force, man. Someday I'll do a European tour over there, by the way. Someday I'll do a Hawks Nest European tour. And you better believe I'm getting my way through Britain. Dizzy says Woolen was being coached to be more handsy like that last season, and it showed the amount of times he got flagged last year. Run defense is better, though. Yeah, it's a little improved. Steamy Dolphins. Why aren't fullbacks used like that at all anymore? I think it could help the Seahawks. I'd love to see a return for fullbacks. Steamy, I think that's what's really eliminated fullbacks is the spread concepts in college football. Because to get more fullbacks in the NFL, you need better development and more development from the college level. And what we've seen instead is fullbacks have been transitioned more to H-back type tight ends at the college level and spread concepts. And so they just got kind of forced out of the sport by the nature then of what the college level was doing. But there's been some teams bringing fullbacks back now. You even see teams, utilizing tight ends into the fullback role and kind of I formation looks at times. So maybe this is a moment where you're going to start to see more of a resurgence of those kind of players. It's certainly possible. And maybe one of the adjustments to be made with these new Mike McDonald defenses that are so hard to deal with is that you start to bring a little bit of a fullback in there to kind of counter some of that stuff. I'll be right back, folks. Bear with me just one moment. If you could for me, please hit that like button while I'm away. For bearing with me there. Another W for Pumpkin. Mythic says, I don't think you have to be fully well-rounded to be a superstar. If some of your traits are so elite, I think they can cancel out any deficiencies, depending on how bad they are. And Wool's deficiencies aren't that bad compared to last year. Yeah. I agree with that fully, Mythic. 100%. O'Dwyer, didn't Woolen have a lingering shoulder injury last year that would impact his run defense? He did. And the thing to consider, too, is that he was also having to rehab throughout the offseason last year because he had that knee surgery that he wasn't allowing him to maybe prepare as well and fully for the start of the season. Hans says, our offensive identity is bombs away. Our defensive identity is pass away. Passed away. Richard says, maybe I'll buy a flat in Seattle. You never know. Let's go, Richard. That's a beautiful place, man. It's a beautiful city. Ethan says, thanks for your answers. If you get to another, why do you think Mike isn't stacking the box like he did with the Ravens? Personnel, or have they not gotten to that part? I was hoping we would see it more. Quite honestly on this, Ethan, it's a frustration of yours I share. And it's a frustration that I also don't have as much of an easy explanation for. I think you bring up in your questions some of the same questions I ask in my own mind. Why wouldn't you be running the same kind of stuff you were running with Baltimore that helped you get this job? It's the thing I always used to say about Waldron, which Waldron comes from the Rams and from McVay. And why doesn't your scheme look anything like the Rams scheme? The whole purpose of you getting hired is that we're wanting to get some of the Rams offense. Your offense looks nothing like the Rams. Your lack of motion, your lack of simplicity of the personnel packages you run to then bring complication by the diversity of what you run play in and play out off of those same personnel packages. Instead with Waldron, you'd get a different personnel package every other snap. So it is a question to me that I don't get and it confounds me. I think that you're probably onto something when you say is some of this the onboarding process of taking time to kind of get all the ins and outs, and that one thing that you knew you were going to get with running those stack boxes because it requires so much disguise. Don't show your hand. If the offense does this, you do that, then you make checks. Everybody adjusts on the side. If you did, there's this whole game with that, not to mention your pre to post snap alignment where you show this, but then you become this. So you have to get to this exact spot and do it this way. So there's a little bit more of that complication there that could be factoring in that Mike wants to keep it simple at first, have them get the basics, and then move on down to the advanced stuff by the end of the year. Certainly as possible as an explanation here, and it would make a lot of sense versus him just deciding not to run it because reasons. I will say, Ethan, I would still like at this point to see a lot more stack boxes than what we're seeing because you're not confusing any offenses. You're not stressing any offenses. You're not making quarterbacks have to think very deeply about what they do. This is how you get a perfect day from Jared Goff where you don't get one incompletion because you're not confusing anything. So I still think that there's a lot more room to start taking better advantage of this, but it is a question I'm asking myself on a weekly basis too, Ethan. Thank you. Dami Doo, have you looked into the whole Eli Geno debacle that the head coach McAdoo's firing? Pretty interesting piece of the Geno story. I'm sure that's been another chip on his shoulder over the years. I know a little bit in passing about it. You know, essentially Eli was at the end of his career and he was done as a quarterback. He was diminished and Geno was the better player. McAdoo was trying to keep his job. McAdoo wanted to go with the better quarterback. The New York Giants fans freaked the F out and lost their mind and ended up putting pressure back on McAdoo to go with Eli Manning. So, but yeah, I think that definitely could provide some fuel to the fire for Geno, where he's like, look, I'm in a situation where I'm better than this guy, but I don't get the job because of nostalgia. That's not fair. Redacted, just asking for my own learning, why you think Sauce is overrated severely. Sauce Gardner got into this league and he got away with from the jump something that I don't tend to see cornerbacks get away from the jump. You'll get older quarterbacks who've made their bones and they'll get the benefit of the doubt from officials on getting a bit grabby. But what I saw from Sauce Gardner from the jump on him is a grabbiness that was unique to unlike anything I'd kind of seen in football, quite frankly. This surpasses, in my opinion, even what Richard Sherman would do back in the day. Just everything at the centerpiece of his game. And you don't have to look too long on this, Redacted. Go through and just go look at any highlight film of Sauce Gardner and watch the plays that are considered highlights And if you lock in and you can especially get a chance to see him like on all 22 throughout the whole course of the play and what he's doing with the receiver, you're watching him time and again create infractions up the football field where he's initiating contact, where his big move is grabbing the shoulder pads right up here, where he'll grab on the shoulder pads here and hold the player up. And does it constantly, like I was saying before, a little bit like this, where you can see him doing it 3 and 4 times over the course of a play on a route where the route's gone past the 5 yards, and he just gets away with it. I don't know why he gets away with it. I don't know why as a rookie he got the benefit of the doubt on that right from the jump in that way. But it stands out. Every highlight I ever see of him, I can almost guarantee you I'm going to see him being grabby on the route and committing that infraction. And I don't see that same thing with guys like Woolen, who I can watch him on the course of a route where he's just running step for step with that guy. He's just purely draping the guy. And Sauce doesn't drape guys. Sauce has to grab and hold them back because he doesn't have the athleticism, the ability to flip his hips, or the explosiveness to stay with those guys. That's why he's getting grabby. Richard says there's still a chance Mike McDonald might find some freebie players somewhere, big defensive players and offensive players that have been released. You're right. You're right. Not all guys that'll fit for one scheme might fit for another. And one of those teams might turning over their defense and looking to move off some of those guys might create market opportunities for us to pick some of those guys up. Tasha says Sauce was also a high draft pick that came in with a lot of fanfare. He also plays on the East Coast, and there's an East Coast bias that I think he's benefited from. He's been handsy from day one. He has. The handsy Ramsey's been that way from the very first jump. And I think you guys are right about the whole major market, New York market, high draft pick. The fanfare probably factors in on some of this. Mythic says there are plenty of corners who were never good tacklers and are still Hall of Famers. Granted, those are different eras, but I think it can be still applicable. Your number one job as a corner is to cover. Hey, who's the greatest corner of all? To your point on this, Mythic, who is usually the most answered when people say who's the best cornerback of all time? Deion Sanders. And Deion Sanders was renowned in his day when he played for not being a guy that wanted to tackle. So it didn't hold him back, to your point. I don't think it holds him back either. Misfit Sauce gets the Jordan rules. Boy, does he ever. He gets the benefit of the doubt like no cornerback I've ever seen because it's blatant with him. I wouldn't be bringing this up if it's not something that's like readily apparent every time you watch a Jets game. Just watch him in coverage. Just watch him. Watch him. Abdi Farrar, how much impact would Hassan Reddick make if the Seahawks trade for him? I would feel like pretty minimal at this point, Abdi. He's got no training camp. He's been out of football through now half a season. So you're going to have to get a couple weeks just to hopefully get him up to snuff. He's a guy that was starting to carry a reputation even back with the Eagles before the trade of being a guy that was more in search of just going for sacks than he wanted to play the run game. Well, what's a big part right now that we got on this team defensively? Is it getting pressures? Is it getting the quarterback? No, we're actually doing that pretty good. It's the run defense. So he's not going to bring anything on that element that you need most help with. And what he brings as a pass rusher, I think, would be helpful. It's not going to be bad to bring him on that, but I think that would limit a bit of his impact and not make it worth the cost of what you'd have to get him up to bring him in. Dizzy says, Dizzy, we can't. Dizzy says, I'm honestly tired of hearing people call out JS and the coaching staff in the first year after a few losses. This is John's first year without Pete in the picture. Let's see how it plays out. I was in Rab Stan's stream and it's so damn negative. I had to leave. Whole chat was dogging on Gino Grubb, etc. It's where I've tried to kind of double back down off this loss, Dizzy, and you got to be aware of it in this kind of where we can all get in our emotions of things and just the understanding of the patient aspect of it. We don't want to be patient as a fandom. Nobody wants to be. We want to get this thing to a winning state. And I think the impatience is not where I want to knock my fandom, my fellow 12s on being, you're so wrong. You guys are shaking a wagon a finger at. I'm not doing that because I think that some of this is understandable, Dizzy. One playoff win since 2017. You got Mariners underwhelming on a yearly basis. No Sonic team. You've got a Seattle region, a Pacific Northwest region that wants to have a winner that they can support. And that doesn't look like, horrible shape. But again, to your point on this, we've got to be patient with this. We've got to let this thing play out. We've got to give it its time to see what it's going to be and see, what bad or good. You can't make that determination 6 games into it, to your point on it. So I'm with you. I think that's the big thing that was my takeaway coming off that game this last week is like, okay, we were hopeful this year. I'm still hopeful this year. Nothing's been canceled out, but at the same point in time, let's recheck the expectations. Let's give this assessment its full time to see what it's really going to be. And then we'll make our determination at that point. Ricardo says we could do a lot worse than JS. For example, Trent Baalke. Doesn't mean the JS doesn't deserve criticism. True. And I do agree with you, Dizzy, on JS would have a job somewhere else, next. He would get hired as a general manager somewhere else if you let him go from here. And I'm not advocating that with John. My thing with this, Dizzy, is I'm putting together a video right now on the offensive line woes. And when it comes to John in prior years and comes to Pete leaving this offseason and having an opportunity to really dial in on that offensive line, he took much of the same approach that he's taken the offensive line for about a 10-year period. And this is more than just looking for John or looking for a different guy than John on this. It's more to say, let me grab John by his ears right now and pull him real close to my face and say, start investing in the offensive line. Stop doing that. And I don't think that stuff's all back to Pete Carroll on that. But I think you can do that criticism without saying, oh, well, now he needs to go because of this. It's just, let's fix this thing. Let's right this road. Let's get back on the road. We're off-roading here on this offensive line thing. Let's get back on the road with it. Let's understand that our approach hasn't worked. Let's stop applying the same thing we're doing on a yearly basis, including this offseason, to the position, being that we only go to the draft to find improvement, or we're going to sign aging veterans on their last legs. We're not going to make trades, and we're not going to sign quality offensive linemen out in free agency. And that's limited us by our pathway to how to improve the offensive line. But again, your bottom line point is a correct one. We've got to be patient with this process and let it all play out. And I'm with you, Jizzy. I still get emo after the losses too. But that's where you take a couple days, you take that deep breath, and you go, okay, perspective. Dizzy, yeah, I always wait till I get a chance to watch the L22 tape after a loss before I make any negative comments. It's a good way to go, man. It's a good way to go. That will definitely give you more data information to operate off of at that point. Brian says Shanahan uses a lot of fullbacks, use check exclusively, and shows how effective one can be as far as pre-snap motions and disguises and running power eye. Yes, he can. Yes, he can. Use check's also pretty unique talent in that way of being able to execute all that stuff. But Shanahan's certainly at the forefront right now of utilization of fullback position amongst anybody in the NFL. Sloby One, thank you for the $5 donation, Sloby. Is there any way we can link the injuries at home to the field turf? Well, the artificial turf has not been the best for players as far as health and safety, Sloby, and grass is better. I heard a rumor that we might be getting grass put in the next couple of years. So if the team has taken the approach to truly do that, then I would love to see it. And I hope that is what's going to happen. But it's been kind of shown that this artificial turf stuff is good for maintenance, good to keep maintenance costs down, not as necessarily good for keeping players' health at its best. That you want grass is the way. There's no reason, I don't care even with the rain that we get in that stadium, pay the extra money, put the grass field in, protect your product, protect your players. So it's probably a factor there, a bit. Yeah, Sloby One. I mean, you kind of take it's hard, I think, to necessarily apply that as that there's a characteristic of the turf this year. So, Leonard Williams, broken rib, nothing to do with the turf. Byron Murphy, pulled hamstring. Well, he's on a block. He's caught up on a block. This other guy hits him and he does the splits. It's not really the field turf at that point. He just did the splits and pulled his hammy. Trying to think through some of the other ones that we might be dealing with, because usually with the turf, you'd go, okay, maybe high ankle sprains, torn ACLs, maybe Achilles. We don't really have anything in that nature this year so far. But bottom line point, let's just get grass. Just get the grass. War Chief, how you doing, man? It's good to see you in the house. Greg says, where did this Hawks have no identity on offense talking point come from? I don't know. Richard, I remember seeing the lights in Seattle on YouTube. It's incredible. I've never seen such beauty in Seattle. People in Seattle have great personality stars. Oh, thank you, man. That's why they call it the Emerald City. But it is a beautiful city at that. Agreed. Reminds me of New York media. Maybe that's the style in the New England media, sports media. Get rid of all the players team lost. Empower Growth, thank God for your streams, Brandon. They helped me get through the dark times. Hey, that's my pleasure to do so, Empower, and I hope it does do that. That would definitely be the hopeful intention. We'd all love, it's easy on celebrating the good times, but if they are the bad one, hopefully I can kind of navigate through these troubled waters so we can get back to the sun and the calm waters once again. Hand grenade before the dark times, before the Empire. Lewis's pumpkin picked us for the win, and it happens to be my birthday. That's good, Hawks. Karma. Let's go. She was on it, man. She went right for it. I set her up in front of it. She went around the whole counter thing and went all the way back around. She took a whole fortuitous route to get there, but she eventually got back to picking our Hawks. Warchi says, I had to take a 12 break from the loss after the Niners. It takes a whole toll out of me, but I'm ready for the next game. Let's go. Beat them Falcons. Let's beat them Falcons. I had to do the same, man. It's taken a couple of days for me to kind of lick my wounds after this one and some deep breaths and calm down. Keep it calm. It's tough, though. O'Dwyer, I think we'll see a lot more roster turnover during this offseason. McDonald will want to get his guys who fit his style of defense. I agree. That's been a bit of my prediction on this one too, O'Dwyer, is that coaches initially come in that first season and you'd kind of think first walk in the door, they'd say, get this guy out, get that guy out. But it's more of that assessment. Wait, what do I got? What do I got? Let me test all these guys out. Let me see what I got. Then we'll do more of the this guy out, that guy out, that guy out. No. I think that's what you're going to encounter more of. I think you're right about that. Nick, I left for an hour and a half and you're still live. Best Hawks YouTuber. Well, thank you, Nick. I appreciate that, man. I love chopping it up with you guys. It's always a good time with my people in here, talking shop, talking Hawks. Appreciate you, brother. Richard, what happened to my message? I got the $2 donation there, Richard. Sorry, did I miss it on that one? I might not have acknowledged it on that one there. That's my bad, man. Thank you for the dono. Thanks for all your donations today. And again, if you're ever looking for getting a place in Seattle, I would highly recommend it, man. Get that kind of, you'll love it, especially going to get a chance to go see a game in person. That's a must as a Hawk fan. Even for you Brits. Promises I'm going to the game Sunday, so hopefully we get that W. Man, it'd be great if I could look in that stadium and they do the shot to the crowd and we get a lot of 12s out there in Atlanta. We're taking over East Coast teams now. Let's go, Promise. I've heard a few people going to the game, so I'd love to see that, especially after last week seeing so much red in our stadium. Ugh. Nagasa says, to me, Revis is better than Sanders. You can make the argument to me on that. You can convince me of that. You absolutely can convince me of that. I mean, there's no doubt about it that he was a remarkably better tackler than Sanders was. And maybe every bit or almost close, where you go, okay, Sanders, he's 96% of Sanders is a cover man, but Sanders is 70% of him as a run defender, as a tackler. It's a great debate. There's a great debate to be had between those two. There really is. But I certainly think Revis deserves to be in the conversation. That's for sure. John says, traded for Devontae Adams for a ham sandwich last week. Now I got 3 beasts at fantasy wide receiver, DK, Devontae, and AJ Brown. That is a very good trio, man. Boy, how much foresight on your part to get ahead of that one. Smart. Richard, give a shout out for Lockett, the receiver who has been with the Seahawks for 12 years. What a successful player. Tyler Lockett, man, just keeps getting it done too, by the way. I mean, is he a centerpiece of this offense? No, but every week he's working his way into this offense. He's got, just checking on where he's at from a projection standpoint. He's just, again, on point to be right around where he's been year in and year out for about the last 6-7 years. I mean, we thought there was going to be a bit of a downturn this year, but 74 receptions is what he's on pace for, 961 yards, touchdowns down maybe a little bit this year, but you would still, I think, feel very good about that. Another year of Lockett giving you that if that's where he ends up finishing off this season and beyond what I thought he was going to bring this year, if that's where his stats end up bearing that out to. But yeah, he's been solid. He's got the job done out there, Richard. Shout out to Lockett, man. He's definitely holding it down. Chris says Woodson is one of the best cornerbacks, IMO. Charles Woodson? Charles or Rod, Chris? Charles or Rod? And both those two guys were really good too. Yeah. Champ's can be in the conversation as well with the career he had. Sloby says, I got to keep Talib in my top 5. Ooh. I definitely think you'd have Dion, you'd have Revis. You'd have to have Champ in your top 5. Those 3 would have to be in the top 5. Does Woodson get in there? Some of that depends on if you're going to do stuff like include like Night Train Lane, who had 79 interceptions. You know, do you just toss out those guys from the 50s and 60s at that point, or did they get a Mel Blount, I think, with the Steelers? Guy caused a whole rule change in the game just because of him. He's so mean. Talib was great, though. Talib definitely an underrated career, Sloby. Underrated career. Misfit says, fix the offensive line. If it doesn't happen, he needs to be replaced. Give him another offseason. Agreed, Misfit. Give him time on it. But that's what John needs to do now. Richard, for the last 5 years, I've seen Lockett play incredible as a receiver in the running game. He's been good, man. He's been good, just consistent, a metronome. Every year you can write him down for between 900 and 1,000 yards receiving every single season. John, they've invested in the offensive line by draft, but there's 3 ways that you can invest in an offensive line. You can draft, you can sign high caliber, good quality free agents, not guys in their last leg, good quality free agents, or you can make a trade for guys. This team has taken the approach, John, of only taking one of those 3 roads as the way to improve that offensive line, the draft. They've ignored the other 2 ways. So there's been investment from the draft, but when it's only that method, and then, John, when you don't necessarily develop those guys as well, which has also gone in tandem of this for while Charles Cross has ascended and done really well. Bradford's not come forward. Oluwatimi has not come forward. None of the 3 guys you drafted this year are having any impact. So while you have gone and invested heavily, you haven't developed, and then you've not done any of the other secondary things to kind of reinforce the ranks there just a little bit. Ricardo says, I think this will take a lot for Jody to fire JS. There's a lot to the job of general manager aside from draft picks and moves, and JSN is one of the most respected general managers in the league. Perception is reality. Agreed. Yeah. Chris says, if I was Arizona's field, I'd blame the field 100%. That place is cursed. It's tough there too, Chris, because that is grass. But you're right. That thing's got, I don't know if they're hiding sprinklers in the grass or what it is. Misfit, even though the Giants paid reasonably for Runyon and Luminor. Yeah, you gotta spend the price. You're not gonna be able to go cheap and expect that to give you functional line play. We've seen that for years not happen. Dale Chapman, we may just lose out on K9 though. I think he might be the odd man out here, Daryl, when it comes to you being able to pay everybody else, but maybe not necessarily paying him. I think you pay Boye. I think you pay Tariq Woolen. I think you pay Charles Cross. I think eventually you're going to pay Witherspoon, but I think that some of this is going to be required to where you're not going to be able to pay everybody. And K9 to me looks like the one who might be that odd man out at that point. Marcus says, many of the stadiums that host the World Cup go temporarily to grass. The NFL season will stay turf. Ugh, I don't like that, Marcus. Go to grass. Power Code, it does look like Gabe's looking longer and longer as a chance to make the season back, man. You're getting down to the wire on this one, and the team's going to need to activate him sooner or it's just not happening. That's for sure. Is Abe just a figment of my imagination? He might be at this point. John says, what a waste of a top pick in Pitts. They don't use him right. If I was Sean Payton, I would have the Falcons on speed dial. Sean would feature him like Graham and would kill in his offense. Rod Woodson. Yeah, Woodson was great too. Woodson played well at safety even after he was done at corner as well. Had a really good long career. A little bit like kind of did the inverse of Ronnie Lott. Ronnie Lott was a safety who became a corner at the end for a few years. And get a good one at that. A good one at that. War Chiefs Niner fans out here trying to say they're cornerback lockdown DK. Yeah, well, DK grabbed 3 footballs in that end zone. Just because 2 were called back doesn't make it a good day for that cornerback. I saw that too, is Demondre Lamore was like really puffing out his chest after that game on Instagram and talking his talk. Bro, you were getting help with double and triple teams in that game. Anybody watching the All-22 can see you sliding coverage for a large part of those snaps. There's a reason why there's 3 bodies around DK on every single throw in that game. So maybe don't talk so loud on that one like you did it all yourself. But yeah, he was feeling himself. He was feeling himself. Yeah, John, you can't forget Night Train Lane, man. That guy, I mean, I know it's going into the way back machine, but he was insanely productive. Rod says, Woodson's one of my favorite all-time cornerbacks. Met him in 92. Great player. Great player, man. Speak to the toughness of a cornerback. It could be a cornerback, a return man, and then eventually also then become a safety. Mel Blount was a beast, John. One of the original originators of the physical cornerback. You know, the guy that just beats you up the field as a receiver. Nitro says, I don't understand why people who say that no-fly zone is better than the Legion of Boom. They talk about how the Broncos had the best offense ever, but they got shut out by the Legion of Boom. Yeah, it's a part that they'd be forgetting a little bit with that, and especially it being the same fan base there, right? Where you'd say, you're the same fan base that saw what our Legion of Boom did to your greatest offense of all time. And the degree of difficulty is 2 different ones when you're talking about playing the Carolina Panthers that year and us having to play the Broncos in 2013. But yeah, not to my eyes either. And as much as Legion of Boom wasn't just about a 1-year situation where you brought parts together and they kind of came together for this, one season. It was 4 years of absolute and utter dominance on the defensive side of the ball. Richard Tyler Hawkins been successful every season. Why can't the other players be like him? Should be captain of the team. I don't know. Certainly he's a good guy and a good person to follow. Radu B, can you show us the top 5 pass protecting offensive lines and show us if they're having success? Sure. And we do have to kind of start to put a bit of a button on this, guys. I've got to wrap this up here pretty soon because I've got the 6 o'clock show and I still need to go get some food right now. So just get a little bit hungry here. We've got almost 4 hours and a half into this. Pass block. Okay, so from a pass blocking standpoint, here I've sorted it by that. So that's why you're getting the sort in the scenario where it's at. So if we look at the top 10 offensive lines in the sport, I think the first thing that we notice is that you only have 2 teams that have a losing record. If we're looking at just general takeaways from this, being the Arizona Cardinals and the Carolina Panthers. Every other team is either 4-2 or 3-3. That's on that list. So overall, yeah. Overall, you would say, and if we took out the bottom line record here, I think you'd be at something like, 32-19 or something, Radu. You know what I mean? As far as just pure record goes. The other thing to do here too is, let's take a look down here at the bottom and also do the inverse, right? So let's not just look at the top 10, look at the bottom 10 as well. And what do we see from the bottom 10? Los Angeles Rams, 32, 1-4. New Orleans Saints, 2-4, 31st. Cleveland Browns, 1-5, 30th. 29th, New England Patriots, 1-5. 28th, Dallas Cowboys, 3-8. 27th, Seahawks, 3-3. Chargers, 26, 3-2. Tennessee Titans at 25th, 1-4. So kind of you do see a bit of the change on that too, where the equivalency there, Radu, also goes to the bottom side, where if your team's a bad pass protecting unit, you're probably not likely to be winning more games than you're losing. And if your team's a good pass protection unit, you're probably likely to be winning more games than you're losing. I think that we can say that in general terms of what we're seeing off this data. And the real key important part of this, Radu, is that this is also data that matches up and aligns to what we've seen in recent years when it comes to these rankings. That this is a continuance of that a little bit. Green Bean says, Rob had a 10-7 prediction before the season. Laughing out loud, he was giving me the stink eye y'all do when I said 7-10, if not 6-11. Well, I mean, I did say at the start of the year that I thought there was a variance here. And the variance was, I don't know if I got to 6, but I thought that there was a Green Bay potential of 7-12 wins. And it was going to be hard to predict exactly where those wins are at, but good on you. Very good on you for being realistic in your outlook. And you're looking pretty smart on that prediction right now. Mark Sanchez, thank you for the $10 donation. I appreciate you for that, Mark. Thank you so much, man. It's good to see you in the house too, brother. Thanks for all you do as far as your support the channel and being a member too. Hey, B, I don't know if you've answered this yet or addressed this possibility. Is it worth trading for Hassan Reddick right now or just let the D get healthier? I read that Seattle is a possible place. I certainly think if you're looking at trading for Hassan Reddick, it does speak to the lack of confidence that Uchenna Nwosu is going to be able to get back this year. With Hassan Reddick, I don't see really an upshot here, Mark. First off, I don't know if the team is really ready to compete. Is Hassan Reddick going to remove the needle in one way or the other in taking you over the top? You know, you make a move like this, you want it to be a move to help get you over the top. Now, whether the Jets have Devontae Adams getting them over the top or not, they view that as a move to get them in that stage. So I don't know if I see that same place when I look at Hassan and feel that. What's it going to cost you? You know, a 4th round pick? You give a 4th round pick up at that point. He is a guy that's carrying a little bit of that reputation from last year, Mark, with the Eagles, that you got this versus Chase Young. These were the same vibes you're getting from Chase Young with Washington Commanders around the trade deadline last year, which was that Washington people were telling you he's really kind of just locking in on trying to rush the passer. He's not as interested in playing the run. And so that's really the kind of player you're kind of just getting there. And with Hassan right now, especially if you brought him in here and there was no new deal to be had, he's going to want to go get those sacks to go get that deal after this year. So does his purpose and motivations and what's drawing him align with what the team wants at that point? I don't see it as much of that. You're going to be on the hook for a pretty good amount of base. That's going to eat up the majority of the rest of the cap space you have to spend this season. You're giving up a 4th round pick. You've already just given up 2 6th round picks over the past, month for defensive ends and edges. We're just dumping resource after resource now into this edge group. And we're doing this at the same time, Mark, that we're not dumping as many resources into things like the offensive line. I think if the team was out to a start, which was more 5-1-ish or more of a spot where this player could really push the needle over the top for him, it would make sense. But given that we don't know what we got, we don't know how long this is going to take, it's not sliding in the good direction right now. It's tracking in the wrong direction as we currently stand. I think the team is better suited with more of a wait and see and more of a valuing of those picks as we move into the future rather than wantonly throwing them away, especially for reactionary moves. And if you're going for Hassan right now, this was not a move that was long planned out. This is a move like Trevis Gibson, like the Roy Robertson deal last year, that you're making in the moment now because of factors that are happening right now in the moment. And the more you do that as a team, I think the more that you harm yourself in the long term in building the team properly with a real true vision. But thank you for the $10 donation, man. Yeah, I don't, when those players get to that point, Mark, and it seems like all those players, when they get around 30, 31, 32, 33, they start to they do a little bit of that math. I'm not going to be as strong in the run game. I'm going to just be more out there headhunting for those sacks. And we need more disciplined play on this defense. We don't need more guys out headhunting for sacks solely a bit. So I wouldn't make the move myself. But it's a great question and something that's worthy of consideration right now because you don't know if you're getting Uchenna back. You don't like what you've gotten from Trevis Gibson in the trade there. And you are then just kind of rolling with those 2 guys off the edge, hoping that they can get the job done. Richard says, why are people scared of the grass? It makes the game exciting just like rugby. To me, I do not like rugby. I like NFL more exciting. I'm not scared of the grass, Richard. I want the grass. It's the NFL teams don't do the grass because it's more expensive to maintain. With the artificial turf, you put it down, you set it, and you leave it. It's good to go. But with the grass, you've got to constantly tend it, and teams don't want that extra cost. Paul Boy, why do people want Reddick? Dude is a locker room cancer and completely screwed the Jets and himself over, not to mention even his agent did not want him, and he is not cheap. Great points as well. Can't offer any more than that. Agree with it 100%. 100%. Dizzy says, did anyone watch the Bengals-Giants game? That Giants defensive line's for real, man. They're good. We got a taste of that ourselves, didn't we? We got to taste ourselves. What are the rules around PUP? When do teams have to activate a player for them to play in the season? The PUP allows you a certain number to it. You can activate them anytime. Then you get like, I think a 4-week period or something like that to practice them before you have to put them on the active roster, and they count on the active roster. But we've reached the point with guys like a Lucas, for instance, that he could be activated anytime. With Uchenna, I think you have to wait like the 4 to 6 week thing, I believe. John says, I wonder who McDonald has his eyes on this upcoming draft because he has so much insight into the college players. Be interesting to see how they move with the draft after this, John. You know, what their approach will be after he has a chance to look at this. So I'm not sure quite yet which way he'll lean. Richard Stewartson with another $2 dono. Richard, thank you again, man, for all of your support to the channel today. I salute you, my man out there in Britain, for holding it down. John says, I said Abe needs to go to Germany like CMC to get some stem cells. He's got to do something, man. Desperate times, desperate measures, John. I think, yeah, Champ Bailey was a badass. Brian, he says, yeah, Mel Blunt was the reason the NFL went to bump and run coverage because Blunt was putting receivers in caskets with it regularly. Yes, he was. He was mean with it. You talk about a true bully on the field, too. A big corner in that day and age. It's like 6'2", 6'3". And he put those receivers to work. Dizzy, Aqib Talib, my favorite moment, Aqib Talib, is yanking off Michael Crabtree's chain. He's a great player too, but I love that moment too. I was always stupid when those players are wearing those chains on the field. You know, it's kind of idiotic. Kind of idiotic. Brian says, okay, I'm out to go eat beef, and maybe I'll swing by the 6 p.m. show later. Sounds good. Well, let me thank the sponsor of this show. That's going to be Underdog Fantasy. They've been sponsoring this show throughout the year, kind enough to do so. And right now, you can use my code NEST on the Underdog Fantasy app, and they will match you on a 2-to-1 basis. So you put $100 down, they'll give you $50 back. You put $1,000 down, you get $500 back. You put $2,000 down, you get $1,000 matched in your pocket today with Underdog Fantasy when you use my code. Or just click down the bottom of the description link section below, and it will take you directly to the Underdog Fantasy site where you can use that code. Now, there are some limitations that do apply in the state of Washington, but if you are in a casino in the state of Washington, you can use the app in full. They've got some great ongoing picks. Usually there's a freebie pick every week where they help you to build up your kind of parlay all together there with that. Take the over, take the under, go head to head with other fantasy people on a weekly basis, refresh your fantasy team on a weekly basis, go win some money today. Using this code, go into Underdog Fantasy site, and thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the show as they have here for about almost 2 years now. I really do appreciate them for doing that. I will be back here very shortly, but not on this channel. We will be back over on the NFC West Roundtable. It's a new show, or not a new show, but I've been having over there on Tuesdays now at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm over there every single week. We do our pregame show here, and then we're going to be doing our, of course, prediction show for Thursday. So you get 2 shows a week off the NFC Roundtable that are going to be over there. But I will be back over there at 6 p.m. So right in about an hour and a half, we'll be bouncing over there. And I'm going to need you guys. I'm going to need you. You know how those guys are over there, okay? They're going to do nothing, but they're going to rub my face in it. I got to listen to the nine. Jesse's going to be on my ass about the Niners. I ain't going to say this is going to be a fun one, but I'll take my medicine, okay? Don't you guys ever say I don't take my medicine. Because I'm going to have to hear about it all. No doubt about that. Come this roundtable at 6. But join me over there. I'll be back on that side of it. We'll be turning this back around too onto the Thursday show. We've got a couple things lined up on that day. We'll be doing the B&B show at 12 o'clock as we're changing our time on that one just a little bit. And then we've got the Behind Enemy Lines as well later on that afternoon. So a lot loaded up on Thursday. So we'll see what our Seahawks can do to turn this thing around. We got a lot loaded up for you guys. I thank you guys for watching today. If you could for me, slam on that like button on the way out the door. Maybe sub on up if you're not already. I really do appreciate it. I want to thank all of the folks who donated to the channel today. Richard, multiple times over. Mark, thank you. Sloby One, Richard, Y2K, Mr. Kane, Hans, Snail, Angry Bucket, Jordan. Really appreciate you guys for all of your support to the channel. It's your donations that make this channel go. It's the patrons that help make this channel go. It's the members help make this channel go. As you guys allow me to do this full time. And I really thank you for it. I love doing this stuff. And you guys give me that opportunity to be able to do this in a way I wouldn't be able to otherwise. So really appreciate you. Tip of the cap to you guys on that side. Back soon. Back very soon. But until that time, even on a 3-3 start, even after 3 straight losses, the darkest is darkest dark before the dawn. Yeah, that's how that's saying. Yeah, that's exactly how the saying goes. I said it right. I said it correct. That's exactly how it says. So who knows? Maybe that light's starting to break on the horizon line in front of us. Maybe we're starting to finally turn this thing around. We'll just have to watch and see how it all plays out. But patience is ultimately the thing that I think all Seahawks fans this season need to keep at the forefront of the mind. We'll come to conclusions. We'll come to determinations. We'll say this player's got to go. This player's got to stay. Once we get to the end of that season, when we've got all of a full season of data under our belt, and we can make a proper determination. Thanks for watching, guys. But please don't you ever forget, go Hawks.